Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Post Credits Podcast. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Max, and on this podcast, we talk about movies after the credits roll. And today, we'll be talking about the entire filmography of Christopher Nolan.
That's correct. We've done one filmography discussion before with a very similar filmmaker, in my opinion. Another one of those blank check guys that gets a big success early in their career and then has the rest of their career to make whatever the hell they want. This guy has a little bit of an easier time getting movies made than David Fincher, though.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, and we'll also be doing this in a tier maker style formatting. So we'll be going all the way from his first film, Following, all the way up to the recent Oppenheimer. Obviously, when we're recording this, The Odyssey still has not come out yet, so we will not be including that one in this.
Unfortunately, we still have to wait about a year for The Odyssey to come out, but we've still got a sizable amount, I think 12 movies to go through here.
Yeah, I think 12.
That he's directed. So still plenty of stuff to do and to talk about. So you want to just jump right into it?
Yeah. For me, Christopher Nolan, I think in my mind, I guess just before we dive into it, he's one of those filmmakers in my mind. I think he's probably the top filmmaker working today. I know Jesse, you might disagree with me on like some other filmmakers that are out there, but I feel like Christopher Nolan, he always shoots for the stars. You always get something like new and innovative in terms of like filmmaking and like storytelling that he has. It never feel like he makes a movie that feels generic or watered down. He always feels like he always like shoots for the stars in his sort of thing. You know, he's got comic book movies, he's got like weird trippy sci-fi stuff. It's just a bunch of things that I think are pretty interesting.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan is the modern James Cameron to me. He's the only filmmaker right now that I think can command in the hundreds of millions of dollars of budgets just because of the name recognition that the studios have with him. That, you know, he goes to Universal, asks for $300 million for a movie, and they say yes because that's Christopher Nolan. And that's unmatched by, I think, any director working right now.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, I guess we should go ahead and get started.
Yeah, so he started his career in 1998 was when he released his first movie. A bit of a smaller production, so not quite as expansive as we will know him for later on in his filmography, but he started out with the movie Following.
Yeah.
So Following takes place, it's a very like low scale production. It's in like one town, and I want to say London.
Yeah, I think
like
something like
in
that.
Some district of England. Everybody's very English in the movie, at least.
Yeah, I mean, Christopher Nolan's British, so that would make sense.
Yeah, that's true. Big friends with the BFI, I'm sure. He basically there's this guy who his hobby is like walking around and following people. He just kind of tags along just to see what they're doing, and he meets up with this guy who he's following, who like the guy that he's following knows that he's following them. As it turns out, that guy's like a weird freak that likes breaking into people's houses just to like see what's there. And the movie progresses from there.
Yeah. Another thing that I also find interesting about this movie is that the guy who's following people follows the guy who breaks into people's houses, and he breaks in. And most other movies would just be like breaking and stealing things, but this movie, it's just like move things around to where like something's not quite right. Like messes with the people that live there. That they go into these houses, they move some things around, they take things out of the drawer and put it up. So not just to steal things, but just to mess around with the people that are living there. But as with the movie itself, for me, obviously, like this is his first ever movie. Of them, this is probably my least favorite of his filmography, just because of all of his movies. It's definitely the smallest. It's the least ambitious. It's in black and white. Some of the audio for me wasn't quite clear, at least of the version that I watched. But
no, the audio was definitely not right. I watched this with subtitles, and it might not have helped that I watched a solid half of it on a plane. But the audio wasn't great in this movie.
Yeah, I watched this movie in a hotel room.
Wow. Okay, this is a big transit movie for us. There's a lot of ambition here, I think, and obviously he doesn't go grand with the scale because he made this with like no money. But the idea of it is very fascinating. That like it's exploring these people who have very common motivations. That like you understand this is something that's been done in movies before. You understand why people might break into a house, but they do it in such a weird way that you don't quite understand what's happening. And the ending of this movie tries to turn everything that you've seen on its head, and that I can respect the ambition there.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially given this film had a $10,000 budget, is truly an achievement for what he was able to do. But of all the films in his filmography, I always have to put this one in last because like I'm the least likely to rewatch it. I'm least likely to go back and pinpoint specific plot points and characters. They're probably easily the least memorable of all of his filmography. But it's one that I think is interesting. It feels like it's like the prototype to what he would later do with some of his other movies. And I feel like this is a start. I think it's kind of cool to see where he was before he became the Christopher Nolan we all know him from.
Yeah.
But this isn't a movie that like I would, of all of his movies, like I said, this is the one I'm least likely to rewatch.
Yeah, but you can see a lot, as you said, this is very foundational for what he would end up doing. Christopher Nolan writes almost all of the scripts for his movies. Him and his brother Jonathan Nolan have been known to collaborate on these scripts. The screenplay for this movie is very indicative of what he would try to do, where the ending recontextualizes the rest of the movie. And there are some movies where he doesn't do that we'll get into, but that seems to be the core thing that he really wants to do, is in telling these movies somewhat non-linearly, he can warp your perspective of the events as they're happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess for me, as a result, not a bad film by any means, but this is one that I respect the craft. I respect what went into it, but as a film just to watch on my own, it's not one that I would particularly enjoy that much. So of it, no means a bad film. I have it at the like teetering B to C, but I'd probably put this in a C tier.
Yeah, I like this movie. It's not quite his best, and it's also not quite his worst. It's very in the middle, but it's one of the very few Nolan films that I am more upset with what he tried to do than with how he did it. You know?
Yeah.
On a $10,000 budget, I respect that you really can't do a whole lot, and while his ambitions are there, a lot of the pieces of the screenplay don't fit together in quite the way that you'd imagine, and the way it works non-linearly, it cuts back between what's happening with the guy and the person he was following and this police interview afterwards, because he's been convicted of breaking and entering on like 9 different fronts as they happen during the movie, and I don't think that works quite as well, especially as we would end up seeing how well it can work later in Nolan's filmography. This goes in the B tier for me.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty. Yeah, I get that. For me, like this isn't a low C tier by any means, but this is one that like of all of his filmography, this is probably the one I'm gonna rank the lowest, just because of the craft and because this is a film that just probably I respect more than I do enjoy it itself. But it's interesting to go back on and see where he started. But that's about it when it comes to me.
Just looking at my list and seeing how you're talking about this movie, I can tell we're going to have some major disagreements later.
Oh yeah,
on.
I'm sure. Even before we hit record, I'm sure there's going to be some movies on this list that me and you're going to disagree with.
Yeah.
Hopefully, this next one isn't one that we have two different thoughts on, and that's Memento. Technically his first movie.
It's not really his first movie. It is his second. You know.
Yeah.
He directed a feature-length film presentation prior to Memento, but it does feel like in the same way that for David Fincher, Alien 3 wasn't really his first movie because there were problems with that and in the production of that. It feels like Following isn't really Christopher Nolan's first movie because Following feels more like he was testing things out and putting his toes into the water, where Memento, he really comes out swinging. So even though it is his second movie, it has the vibe of a debut.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like with this movie, like I'm just gonna cut right to it. I think this movie's excellent. I think it's probably one of his best in his entire filmography, just because it's smaller scale and it has just such a unique concept. But not only that, it's played entirely out of order. Yeah. So the whole time it's like you have scenes in black and white moving forward, and you have scenes in color moving backward, and all of them converge in the third act. And it's so like the ending to this movie, which I'm sure we'll get into specifics on what that is. It's one of the very few endings to a movie that I legitimately like sat back, like jaw on the floor.
Oh
like,
yeah,
agaze.
It's a very, very good ending. I totally agree with you. Memento stars Guy Pearce, and as this guy, I don't remember his name. It is Leonard. Sorry, I had to look that up. His name is Leonard, and he has like very, very severe short-term memory loss. He explains it in the movie that he can only remember about 15 minutes at a time. And then he will forget anything past 15 minutes because of this incident which involved the death of his wife. And like that, something with that, he hit his head really hard, and the blunt force trauma gave him that amnesia. And so he writes everything down on various notes. He has tattoos on his body that remind him of certain things. He has photographs that he keeps in his pocket that he writes notes on, to like remember things, and that he can refresh his memory
Yeah.
constantly.
And yeah, for this movie, it's like I find it interesting, like the whole memory concept, because it's like he can't create new memories, but also he can't forget some of the old ones. To where all he remembers is that his wife was killed and he needs to go find her killer. And the
Right.
way this movie's structured is that in the opening scene, you see him killing someone
Hmm.
who you later see on in the movie, but it's not really clear exactly who that is
Right.
until later on. And this whole movie builds up to where scenes play out of order, to where he sees something and remembers it, and to where we see revelations he has with this girl that he meets. And
Hmm.
then scenes later you understand like what that entails, and it builds up to this incredible like ending in my mind, where the killer, this guy, I feel like his name's Teddy or something.
Teddy.
Yeah, I remember that because I remember that name is repeated throughout the movie, to where
Yeah.
he's the guy that he kills in the opening scene. And in the what seems to be the ending of the story, he confronts him, and he basically tells where Teddy basically tells Leonard that he was responsible for killing his wife, and basically everything about him and his wife is revealed right there. Only to reveal that's the beginning of the story. You hear
Yeah.
narration. I remember the ending is now where was I? And I just completely stopped and I was like, oh my god, this is how it started.
Yeah, it's the whole movie is told backwards. There's a scene where like it starts with Guy Pearce. He's like frantically searching for a pen, and he's in the house of this woman he's met, and he's looking for a pen because he needs to write down something that's happened. But then something else happens in the scene, and he forgets what he was trying to write down. And then the scene after, we see what the thing that he was trying to write down was, and that's really well done,
Yeah.
and really sort of suggests that this whole thing is being told backwards. What's Basically, there are a couple of different stories at play here, all of which are really interesting. Where essentially the only thing Leonard knows about his wife's killer is that his first name was John and his last initial was G. So he spends all this time looking for John G. All the while, he used to be, before the incident, he was like an insurance claims investigator.
Yeah.
And there's this one story of a guy who like had his same condition, that they were trying to get insurance for that condition, and like medical insurance, some sort of reimbursement for the medical bills that they had to pay. And that story concludes with him, the guy with short-term memory loss, accidentally killing his wife, who was on insulin, because she keeps, like, to test that he's not faking it, she keeps asking him to give her insulin, and he keeps doing it because he doesn't remember that he's already done it.
Yeah. I don't know. This movie's just it's super interesting, and especially the first time I watched it, like this was one of those movies that I watched and sat back. I was like, you can do so many amazing things in filmmaking that doesn't require like a $300 million budget to pull it off. Obviously, that couldn't be more apparent now, but I watched this
Right.
movie for the first time back, I think in 2021 was the first time I ever. No, I think it was 2020 because I was trying to watch this before Tenet came out, but I couldn't
Oh,
go to
yeah.
the theater because there's a global pandemic
Yeah,
that
it's
emerged.
true.
And I just sat back and watched this. I'm like, all he did, if he just told this story linearly, it wouldn't be as interesting, because you see a guy with short-term memory forgetting everything that he's seen. But because it's told out of order, and some things that he sees has revelations of things that happen later, but then it's revealed that those happened first, and especially how the ending blows off, just like we said, it's one that like it adds so much to a movie that doesn't feel like it needs it.
Right. And it's like you take a generic story, like, but what is by all means a somewhat generic story, like you can basically do without some of the, the subplots there, and have yourself kind of just a regular revenge story, a blood revenge story that we see so often in the movies. But by telling it backwards, he adds a whole nother layer to it. And it leaves you with so many questions that you just like you don't have answers to. And that's one of my favorite things about Christopher Nolan movies, is that they inspire conversation after the fact, where like you don't actually know whether or not, like, how to interpret the ending. So like we'll get to Inception in a little bit.
Yeah.
That has a very, very famous instance of that.
Yeah, this movie, I love it. It's one of my favorite. Like, I guess if you would call this an indie movie, this is one of like the one, not only one of the first I saw, but just one of the ones that I just sat back and like I absolutely loved. For me, this is going up in the S tier. Like, this is like almost prime Christopher Nolan telling a story. And I honestly wish with some of his later filmography, where he's trying to go bigger and better, I feel like at some point in his career, I think he should go back to making movies like this because I feel like this is where he really shined as a filmmaker. Not saying the rest of his career. Obviously, we're going to get into more movies later that I'm going to be gushing about. But for this movie, especially being his second movie that he's ever done, immediately right out of the gate, like he proved who he was.
Yeah, I agree. This is also an S tier for me. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't ask the question, and this is a spoiler for Memento. Do you think that Leonard killed his own wife? Like, do you think the story? Because in the movie, they say that it's possible that the story he tells about the guy who killed his wife, who is on insulin, actually wasn't real, and he was remembering that as a false story, but it actually happened to him.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the big question that this movie leaves you with: is who actually killed Leonard's wife? Because he already killed a guy. We know that he already killed a guy because he has a picture after him killing a guy, and then the only reason that he decides to then go after Lenny, what was his name? I totally forgot.
Oh,
Teddy.
Teddy.
The only reason Lenny is a Leonard, but Teddy. The only reason he goes after Teddy is because he finds out that Teddy's name is John Edward Gallum.
Which is John G.
And so he knows that he's gonna forget it, so he's just gonna keep going after it, and that's gonna be his life now, and that's the big twist. But the question becomes, who actually killed his wife? Was it John G. or was it himself? What do you think?
I feel like there's a lot there that on both sides. I have a feeling that just given how like the ending was revealed that I guess where John G or Teddy was so involved with it.
Yeah.
I feel like there's enough there to where I slightly believe that he was the one involved for it, but I have a feeling that it wasn't just all him.
Right. Okay. That's fair. And
yeah, what about you?
Yeah, I think that there's enough there to say that he didn't do it. Like there's it feels to me like they're pretty clear about the fact that that the amnesia that he had wouldn't necessarily change his previous memories. I don't think there's any particular reason for it. Like the idea that's said in the movie is that his wife was attacked and that's when the injury happened, but then she survived up till him killing her with the insulin. I don't think that he would remember that even as a false story.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking too. I have a feeling that John G, I think, was more involved with the death of his wife.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. But if you had said that you thought that it was Leonard, I totally could understand that argument because maybe he made up a story after doing it, but you just don't know. You really just don't know. And that's one of the things I think is masterful about this movie.
But yeah, it's an incredible film. I can understand for some people on rewatch value, obviously like a movie that plays out of order has a big twist. Obviously like that wouldn't play the same on rewatch. I've only seen this movie once.
Me too.
And I feel like the next time I'm going to rewatch this movie, it's going to be another 5 years because I don't want to have to. I want to like watch this movie where I can experience that again.
Right.
And I feel like if I rewatch it multiple times, every time Christopher Nolan has a new movie, this one would probably go down because every time I watch it, I can just predict exactly where it goes.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Like that's a thing we should probably mention is that a lot of these movies, because they rely so much on twists, it's important to note whether our opinion is influenced by us having seen it multiple times. I have only seen all of these movies once. I don't tend to rewatch movies, and none of these movies have been not worth rewatching, but like I haven't gotten into the situation where I would rewatch them. So I've only seen them once. So that's an important thing to mention.
Yeah, but like I said, like Memento, I think it's a great movie, and especially like for like aspiring filmmakers, like I guess me and you. I guess this is a film that I'll be this is a film I have as like a source of inspiration. It's one that like you can do so much with such a little budget.
Yeah. No, this is a great movie, and this is also a very good screenplay by Jonathan and Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess moving on to the next one on this list, this was his first big studio film. Christopher Nolan was Memento wowed the heads of studios, and he was able to do Insomnia, which is an odd one in his filmography, at least for me, because he's not the credited screenwriter, although he did punch up the script a little bit, and it's a remake of a foreign film. And it stars Al Pacino and Robin Williams, to where Al Pacino, I think, has insomnia, and he's in a fog, and he shoots someone who he's trying to catch a killer, and he ends up shooting his associate. And so the whole movie goes through, did he do that on purpose, or did he do that on accident?
What movie is this a remake of?
I know, it's a remake of some foreign film, I think.
Really? Okay. I didn't know about that. The studio that he ended up wowing was Alcon Entertainment,
Yeah.
who would go on to do Blade Runner 2049. That's their big one. Um, the movie, the title Insomnia is a reference to the Al Pacino character who he can't sleep because he is in Alaska to research this homicide case. And the thing with Alaska is that the sun doesn't go down like ever
Yeah.
because it's so far north. He's clearly not in like Juneau, you know. He's all the way up north, and the sun barely goes down, so he can't sleep. He doesn't sleep throughout the entirety of this movie, and yeah. So, what do you think about it?
I actually think this is probably his most underrated movie on this list.
Okay.
It's one I don't have it placed like when you get into where I place it, it's not going to be like that's at the top. But of all the films in his filmography, I feel like this one should be talked about a little bit more than it should because I think there's a lot here that really works. I love the performances from Al Pacino and Robin Williams, and also from Hilary Swank as well. I think it's an interesting like cat and mouse style like thriller, but also kind of exploring a big incident that Al Pacino has to where you remember that scene like he's in the fog and he shoots like so he thinks he's the killer, but ends up being his partner.
Yeah,
and it kind of answers this question: was that on purpose or was it on accident?
Yeah,
just because of his insomnia.
That's the big question in this film is because and this is something that would also be explored in some later films of his, but the question that the Robin Williams character, who we eventually learn, and not like far into the film, we actually learn that he's the guilty party in the homicide case. He killed it's like a 17-year-old, 16-year-old girl that they're trying to solve the homicide of, something like that. And it was this Robin Williams character, this writer who writes pulp novels. Was it? I don't remember if it was pulp novels or if it was like detective novels.
I think it was something like that. I remember it was like
he's an author of.
Or he's an author.
Al Pacino doesn't like his books. That's the important part, is that Al Pacino doesn't like his books. And the thing that guy, the Robin Williams character, keeps asking Al Pacino is, did you do it on purpose? And initially his answer is like, no, because he knows he didn't, like he knows it was an accident. And then as the movie goes on and he hasn't like turned himself in or told the truth about what he's done, even he starts to question whether or not he did it on accident or on purpose, because his partner's also been like colluding with this larger organization that was going to find them a lot of money or something, like work out some new deal. I don't remember the specifics of that plot.
Yeah, I remember his partner's Hilary Swank in that case.
Yeah, Hilary Swank then becomes his partner after he kills his old partner. I found the movie this was a remake of. It was also called Insomnia. It was a Norwegian film directed by, and I'm going to mispronounce this, Erik Skjoldbjarg.
Oh my god.
I think it's Skjoldbjarg. I'm not sure though.
I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that. I'm gonna butcher it.
It stars Stellan Skarsgård as the the Al Pacino character. So yeah, check that out, and don't try to phonetically type in what I just said.
Yeah, but I think the movie itself has a lot to offer. I think it's actually a pretty solid little detective movie. Although it doesn't have like I said, even though Christopher Nolan did punch up the script, he's not the credited writer. It's the only film of his that he didn't write, and I feel like you can tell like there's not like a big twist reveal or there's not like something interesting with the plot. It's just a straightforward investigation, or a straightforward murder investigation, I should say.
Right.
And I feel like it's good at that. There's some great performances. Not one that I think is like the best of the best, but one that I think is pretty solid in his filmography, and I think should be talked about more because I feel like it's good at what it does.
My big problem with this is that the original movie that this is based on, that this movie borrows the screenplay for, was 22 minutes shorter. And you can feel that the movie is supposed to be 22 minutes shorter. There's a point at which the movie completely runs out of plot. And you're like, what are they gonna do with the rest of this movie? Like, whoa, how are they gonna add more wrinkles? And they don't. They just keep filming. It doesn't feel like they're actually adding anything more. And by a certain point, this movie gets boring as hell. So I feel like Christopher Nolan's edits, I don't really think they help this movie all that much. And I don't know how good the original Insomnia was, because I've never seen it.
I haven't seen it either.
But if the only change is that it's 22 minutes shorter, like if the script is the same and it's 22 minutes shorter, it's already better, because the last act or so of this movie, because it gets stretched out into 3 acts over 120 minutes, the last act of this movie is one of the most boring 20-minute segments in Christopher Nolan's filmography. Nothing happens. They're just shooting randomly because they kind of just need to fill the space. And it really just it drags the movie down so badly.
I mean, yeah, I guess there's some truth to that. I don't know. For me, I kind of like some of the simplicity here. I guess either this movie or Following, I guess, is Christopher Nolan's most simplistic movie. But I feel like with this one, like, I'm not really as keen to rewatch it. It's one that I don't remember too many specifics about it. But it's one that every time I do watch, I've seen it twice.
Yeah.
Both times I've watched it, I've enjoyed it. I think it's good, but of the rest of his filmography, it doesn't stand out as much as the others.
No, it really doesn't stand out. This movie's on Criterion for some reason. That's why I watched
not
it.
really sure why.
I don't know if they did a Nolan collection, but this is the only one that's there. So.
Yeah, but yeah, as for me, I think it's solid. I put it in a B tier. I think it's solid. Like, I don't have really major complaints with it, but I don't have anything major like, oh wow, like just like we talked about with Memento had that big shocking ending. This movie just doesn't really have too much of that. It's just okay, like solid enough, good enough. That's all I have to say.
I don't like this movie. This movie, my big problem with it is that there's not enough screenplay for the runtime. So I put it in the C tier.
Okay, it's not too much lower than me.
It's not that much lower than you.
Yeah,
but it is lower, and that's what I feel like is important.
Yeah,
it's lower, and I did not like this movie as much as you like this movie.
Yeah. Speaking of which, on the next one on here, you're about to be breaking my heart with this one, and that's Batman Begins. After the success of Memento and the success of Insomnia as well, Christopher Nolan was snatched up by Warner Brothers to reboot the Batman franchise after Batman and Robin really destroyed that franchise for a while. And if you've seen Batman and Robin with the super over cartoony aspects to it, you can understand why. And so they bring it back to a much darker take on the Batman character. As for me, I know you're going to disagree with me on this one. I really like this movie a lot.
Yeah.
I've rewatched it quite a bit. Yeah, you can go.
Okay, yeah, so I feel like we haven't talked about a superhero movie yet, really, on the podcast. We got pretty close when we talked about Superman in our most anticipated movies. But the difference between you and I is that I am not super well-versed in the comics for these superheroes, and I also don't watch a lot of superhero movies. Aside from the MCU, which I apparently watched all of the MCU movies pre-Endgame, but forgot 90% of them, I haven't seen like any DC movies, and the superhero that I'm most cinematically aware of is Batman. Even forgetting the Nolan trilogy of movies, I've seen 3 unique adaptations of Batman and 4 movies that had Batman in them. So and for all the other superheroes, it doesn't compare. I've only seen the MCU renditions of all the Marvel superheroes, and I've seen 2 unique Supermans. So Batman, going into it, I kind of had a basis for like what I was expecting from the movie. And what I didn't like is that this was very little about Batman as much as it was about Bruce Wayne before Batman. It was very origin story prequel-y, but it was a prequel to a movie that like we didn't have yet. Which I didn't quite like.
Yeah, I disagree with you on that. I love, that's one of the aspects of this movie that I absolutely love. Bruce Wayne and his origin is one of the things that I think are interesting. I mean, sure, you can get past like the part like when they're walking down the alley and the gunshot goes off and the pearls on Martha Wayne's necklace like going bouncing on the pavement.
Her terrible pearls.
You don't have to do that, but like on here, like I just love how they flesh out his character, especially with Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul. I absolutely love that training sequence and like his story of becoming. I don't necessarily think it's a prequel to a movie. It's really just like establishing Batman and his kind of role in this version of Gotham City. And I feel like that's also really interesting to where not a lot of movies, I feel like of all 3 of his Christopher Nolan movies, this one's probably the most Batman-centric, where the other 2 we get in, I feel like the villain performances outshine Batman himself. I feel like here you really get a sense of who Bruce Wayne is as a character, as well as the persona of Batman. You get a bunch of like great cast. You get, Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox, which I'm sure we'll talk about in the later movies. Of course, I talked about Liam Neeson. You get Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow.
Yeah, really I love Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, cool villain. You also get Carmine Falcone, whose his storyline wasn't as interesting, but I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, the thing with Batman, and this is something that I constantly have heard being tossed around. I don't know if it's true, because again, I don't read the comics. I've only read 1 comic, and it was Fantastic Four Volume 1. Oh. The Batman like idea is that the villains are the stars, and in a broader sense, Gotham City is the star because Gotham City is this place that breeds these hyper criminals. And it's like, okay, why don't we see that reflected in this movie? Because this movie is trying to be about Batman, but it wants to step away from everything that Batman is actually about. Like, it's not about Batman. It's not about Gotham City. It's not even really about Scarecrow. It's like there's nothing more for it that's left for it to be about. And at the end, it just starts to be this, like, this majestic look at Batman as a character and what it is in the popular culture, which in this movie essentially boils down to he's there, and that means he's good. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
I mean, I guess there's some to that, but I feel like with Batman Begins and then also with Matt Reeves as the Batman, I feel like those are the ones where like Batman is the star, Batman is the central character, and I feel like with this movie, when you go back and explore kind of his origin, like this whole movie isn't necessarily his origin per se, but I feel like you also get a sense of like Gotham as this crime-ridden city, and you have someone in a bat outfit showing up, taking all these criminals out, and who ends up being the main villain in Ra's al Ghul. He kind of reflects, he's the guy that trained Bruce Wayne. And so when you get to the third act, it's just like the guy who trained him is the guy who's ultimately the main antagonist of the film, which I think was done well. And you also get, I didn't feel like Scarecrow was as utilized as maybe I'd hoped he would be. But I feel like that stuff's really interesting, especially the stuff with the fear toxin mask. I think that's really cool. It actually scared me quite a bit as a kid. Which is why I didn't... Yeah, I've rewatched this movie a lot. I've seen it about like 3 times. I absolutely love the character of Batman, and I feel like for this movie, I think it was a really good introduction to this trilogy. And I feel like of all the Batman actors up to this point, obviously I know there's 2 that came after this, but I feel like of all the Batmans to this point, like this is the one where you get to see Batman as a character, to where Michael Keaton's Batman, as much as some people may love him, up until the Flash movie that came out recently, Michael Keaton's Batman doesn't really seem to be the central character in either of the Tim Burton's movies, because it doesn't feel like he's the character that he's most interested in exploring. And obviously like the 60s were really cartoony and kind of live lead versions of everybody, and then Kilmer and Clooney are pretty much forgotten. I feel like with Christian Bale, I feel like you really get a sense of Bruce Wayne, Batman, and that whole character. Obviously, like there's some nitpicks with this movie, the bad voice in all 3 of these movies are terrible. I don't know why he did it. And then also, it gets to a point where 2/3 of the movie is about him tracking down, I guess they call him Falcone instead of Falcone in this movie. To where he captures him, and the movie has to kind of reshuffle a little bit to focus on Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul. I feel like some of that could have been handled a little bit better. But the biggest thing that holds this one back from being like one of the best comic book movies in my mind, the action in this movie, or I guess in all 3, but in this one in particular, is so bad.
Yeah,
I can't even, like, he chose to like shoot it from the perspective of the criminals, and as you just see like fists flying everywhere, you can't even get a sense of what you're watching.
Right.
But it's a movie that like I love the origin. I love the introduction of this version of Gotham.
Yeah, that's one of the things, the action particularly, is a pitfall that I find in so many action movies, which is that if I don't know where the characters are, it's far easier for me to check out of the scene than to actually like put effort into understanding it. It's one of the things I loved about the Bob Odenkirk film Nobody, which was you knew where everyone was no matter what the scene was, and the action scenes carried weight to them. Yeah. This carries no weight to them, no weight to the scenes, no weight to the characters. It really just feels like this movie only exists because they did Batman. Like that was their goal, was to have Batman in the movie. They succeeded, and the rest of the movie was kind of ancillary.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's just for me, but I thought this was a great movie. Not quite best of the best in my mind when you talk about Christopher Nolan's filmography or even like comic book movies in general. But this is a movie that every time I've watched it, I've really loved it. And you just get a sense of like the story of becoming his his appearance. You see people like are actually like scared of him, and then you actually get like the emergence of all these like dangerous criminals, to where he has to come with himself. Does he want to be Bruce Wayne? Does he want to be Batman? He enters in Batman and sets a moral compass that he doesn't kill everyone. But even like the ending, some people find this silly, but like when he on the scene where Ra's al Ghul goes on the plane, he says, "I won't kill you, but that doesn't mean I have to save you." Like I thought that was so cool when I was a kid. It's a little silly now, but it's one where it's like he does have a moral compass right out of the gate, right? Like if you watch Ben Affleck's Batman suddenly running around with machine guns, mowing down people, you don't understand why. Whereas this movie, as you've seen his origin play out, his actions reflect that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It just doesn't quite work for me. I put this one in the C tier. which would put it above Insomnia and below Following for me.
Yeah, for me, I have this one all the way up in the A tier.
Okay.
There's some nitpicks to be had, like I said, the bad voice, the action. Katie Holmes is horribly miscast as Rachel in my mind.
Oh yeah, they changed that actually.
Yeah, they changed it in the Dark Knight. They changed it in the Dark Knight, but yeah, Katie Holmes is not not as bad as some people make it out to be, but not great casting either.
Yeah, I also don't like how Alfred is written in any of these movies.
Really?
Michael Caine's a great actor, and he has the voice to carry Alfred, but it just feels like every time he opens its mouth, it's not good. It doesn't really move the plot forward in any meaningful sense. He basically spends large swaths of these movies waxing poetic about his time, like serving under the British militia in these foreign countries, which becomes more and more clear the more he talks that he was part of the imperialist forces. Huh. And he keeps talking about, and especially in The Dark Knight, he keeps talking about, he keeps trying to derive these moral lessons from his time in the Corps, and it doesn't quite read as well as Nolan might think it does. And I feel like there's some weird military, idolization, I want to say, in a lot of these movies. But generally, it's something that I can avoid. It's just when it happens, I want to rip my skin off. But yeah, it's not good. It's not a great movie, unfortunately.
Yeah. For me, I would disagree with that, but we're all open to opinions. But yeah. I mean, I guess with Michael Caine's Alfred, I feel like I kind of like some of the dialogue he has with Bruce Wayne, but I don't know, like from other Alfreds, like he's one that's just kind of there. I like some of like the butlery things that he does, especially in like some of the later movies. But yeah, I guess that's Batman Begins for that one.
Yeah, no, I didn't quite like Batman Begins.
And then following that one up, which this one's kind of ironic because it was sandwiched between two Batman movies, but as of the last couple of years, a lot of people have been coming around to this one, and that's The Prestige.
I think it's The Prestige.
The Prestige.
Yeah.
With Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
Who basically played like these two rivaling magicians who used to work together, but after a tragic incident involving one of their wives, Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman are like bitter rivals. And like basically Hugh Jackman is better at the presentation and Christian Bale's better at the trickery and kind of like the actual magic part to it.
Right.
And so you have these two rivaling characters who kind of are going at each other to see who can come out on top.
Yeah, and it was I think the Hugh Jackman character, his wife, right?
I think it was his wife.
They essentially they do this trick where her hands get tied up and she has to escape this locked box that fills up with water.
The water tank.
And she is like, she's worried that the audience is noticing that the knots are tied too loose. And so she wants the Christian Bale character to tie her knots tighter, which he does, right? Or we presume that he does. And then she gets dropped into the water, but she dies. She drowns. She's not able. It doesn't work for her because she can't actually get out of the ropes. Like, she can't escape.
Yeah.
And that's what drives the movie. And this is another thing like Insomnia, where the question is, did you do it on purpose? And the Hugh Jackman character is desperately trying to figure out whether he actually tied the tighter knot or the looser knot, right? Yeah. And so he's finding his diary. He gets him arrested because they keep trying to go up on stage and ruin each other's tricks. And there's this one trick called the Transported Man, who...
Oh, yeah, that was a huge... Yeah.
The Christian Bale character comes up with, which is essentially you walk in one door, come out the other, but there's like a gap between the doors. So how do you do it? Like, you walk in one closet, then you come out the other, and you're exactly the same. And the Hugh Jackman character figures out how to do it, but in the opening scene of the movie, we assume it's gone wrong because he finds himself drowning in this tank. There's the same tank, or the same model of tank that his wife drowned in. And Christian Bale comes in, and he sees that he's drowning, and he's like, oh, I gotta get him out of here. He tries to, smash the case, but he dies, and the Hugh Jackman character, that this all was, planned. And so he gets convicted of killing him in that trick because he keeps going on stage and killing his tricks. And he gets sent to jail, and all of his possessions get auctioned off, and that's how Hugh Jackman buys his diary to read to figure out if he tied the right knot or not. And we find out that Christian Bale, that character, he doesn't even know if he tied the right knot.
Yeah, I think that was the whole thing about it.
Right.
And also another thing about this movie is that the trapdoor trick with Hugh
Hmm.
Jackman, to where he goes through the trapdoor and he appears at like the top of the balcony.
Yeah.
That whole sequence was just, I think it's probably one of my favorite sequences in the entire
Yeah.
movie. And so where you just see like the rivalry where like Hugh Jackman is putting like a bird cage on someone's stage, and you see a
Hmm.
man who thinks is some guy in the audience who comes up and puts his hand on the cage, and it
Hmm.
reveals that like he has missing fingers as of what happened earlier in the film. And
Yeah.
it's Christian Bale's character snaps the cage on this lady's hand,
Yeah.
and the whole movie just goes into to this bitter rivalry of the characters. And to this movie in particular, when I first watched it, I didn't know if I fully loved it.
Right.
The more time I've thought about it, I really do like this movie. The big thing that always holds this movie back is because there's a rivalry between these two characters. Neither one of them are good guys. Neither one of them I can root for. So the whole time I watch the movie and I just see two guys desperately trying to one up each other, but there's not one that I'm rooting for to go out on top. So the whole time I was just kind of watching it going like, this is like obviously like really well done and everything. But I couldn't buy into either one of the characters' actions. Like, these are both terrible people doing terrible things.
Right. There are two. I mean, I disagree with you. But there are two tricks in this movie that I think encapsulate the dynamic between the two characters. Right. There's the bullet catching trick and the birdcage trick, both of which they go wrong in the movie. The bullet catching trick is essentially you load a blank into a gun, you have an audience member shoot it, and then you hide a bullet in your sleeve, and then you turn away when like the shot happens, and then you fetch the bullet from your sleeve and you show it as if you've caught the bullet, right? The way that goes wrong is by inserting the bullet, like inserting another bullet into the gun, which then makes it not a blank but just a loaded gun. And so that ends up shooting off the Christian Bale character's two of his fingers.
Yeah.
And there's the birdcage trick, which is essentially you have your hands on the birdcage and you push the cage all the way down, and it makes it seem like the bird is like dead, obviously. And it goes into this trap door in the door, or like in the table that they have. And then there's another bird hidden essentially in your sleeve, which you then take out and it's free. But the first bird that was in the cage actually does die.
Yeah.
And that's the twists that we learn for both of these characters are essentially told in those two tricks. I think that's genius. I love this movie.
Yeah, I think it's very well done. Save for like the fact that I couldn't buy into the rival of the two. Oh yeah, probably another thing we should touch on.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people think that of all of Christopher Nolan's movies, this movie has his best twist. Do you agree with that?
Yes, 100%. The twist in this movie, when I first watched it and I first saw it, I was like, okay, the twist is fine, you know? I thought about it, and it took me about 5 hours after watching this movie to pump this all the way up. I originally had this below Memento. This went almost all the way up my list. Like, I thought about it like a little bit more. Everything started to kind of click into place, and the themes it was exploring were just amazing. My only problem is that we don't get enough time with the twist.
Yeah, it's where it's like Christian Bale's like he has the body double.
Yeah, so
basically how he's able to pull a bunch of that stuff off.
Christian Bale's body double is his brother, his identical twin. That is like he has him dress up as like the guy who makes all of his tricks. But no matter what they do, they're always trying to like mimic each other and be perfect and exact. So like when his fingers get shot off, the other one cuts off his fingers at the same places.
Yeah, I remember there's a scene where like he smashes on the table.
It's disgusting, but it's so good. And then like throughout the whole movie, Christian Bale and his wife are having trouble because his wife is noticing that on some days, Christian Bale likes magic more than he loves her. Because on different days, it's different brothers playing that spot. And one of them loves his actual wife, and the other one loves his like magic assistant that he's hired. And that's how he does the transported man trick. And Hugh Jackman actually did it via magic. He goes to Nikola Tesla, who in this movie is played by David Bowie.
Which I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I thought that was cool too. I like David Bowie. To create this machine that will essentially transport him from one place to another. And his assistant, who's played by Andy Serkis, is wonderful. And so essentially he has this big machine where he transports one version of him to the balcony, and the other version of him drops below the plate and drowns in the tank, which then Christian Bale, that's the version of him that he found that he tried to break him out of. I thought that was so genius, and it was so good. And I don't know if it's going to be better or worse on a rewatch. I've only seen this movie once, but
Yeah,
I
have too.
love the twist so much. It's so good.
I think it's a great twist too. Like thematically, like this movie, like I think is very good. Save for like my thing that I couldn't root for either one of the characters. Another thing that I also had with this movie as well is that so much of magic is about, you know, awe and wonder and like childish excitement in a way. And this movie plays it so dark and gritty
Yeah.
that some of it kind of takes away. Like there was a scene with Christian Bale where he was showing the birdcage trick to a kid, and the kid gets scared because he's thinking that he crushed the bird.
Right.
And he's thinking, it's like, oh, it's all right. He's like, oh, and then the kid's still upset, like, oh, where's his brother? And part of that is just like magic is supposed to be like awe-inspiring, and you have like such a dark trick to that. That some of it kind of takes, like, it's not as big of a caveat to me, but like that was one that I kind of sat back and I was just like, I kind of wish it was more like, you know, awe-inducing. They really saw like the audience like kind of like see what they were doing.
I don't know. I love the dark take on it. It's like Batman is also a kid's property, and they did a dark take on it, and I don't think it worked because they played it straight. Like that's how Batman was always supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean Batman in the comics now is a lot darker
now, but like with DC Black and whatnot.
Yeah.
I think the way it works with magic, it's juxtaposed a lot better. And this is S tier. This is above Memento.
Yeah, I have this at A tier. I have it slightly below Batman Begins, but like it's not too close. I think if I give this movie another rewatch, I'll definitively say whether it will stay in A tier or move up to S tier. But yeah, for me, like I really do like this movie. I feel like it definitely needs more credit than I feel like it initially got. I feel like part of it was just because it was sandwiched between two Batman movies. Like Batman Begins came out before this. The Dark Knight, obviously, we'll talk about next, came out after this. It's a very, very good movie. Like when I first watched it, like there were so many things that I thought were awe-inspiring. The twist, it's like you said, great twist. Really kind of like left me in awe. Like Memento and this movie, I think both kind of like were like had like both breathtaking endings. Although like the entire movie, I had trouble of who to root for between like, because there was such a bitter rivalry with Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman that I couldn't really side with either one of them. So it just kind of made an experience to me. It was just like, I love everything I'm seeing. I kind of wish there was a little bit more of which one am I supposed to follow and root for? Which one am I supposed to be like, that's an antagonist?
Yeah, I kind of like that neither of them fit into that mold. I feel like if it would have severely negatively impacted the movie for me. And I was just able to kind of root for the plot, you know? How does this get more interesting? And no matter where you are in the movie, it gets more interesting, which is kind of a problem because it ends immediately and you don't have any time to process it in the same way.
Even like the ending even took me by surprise. Like it took me a while to process it. Like I didn't immediately get the twist when I first watched it, but the more I thought, it took me a couple days for me like to just sit back and be like, oh my god, like that's everything that happened. It's just like, again, very good movie. I bet if I rewatch this and we do another tier list when the Odyssey comes out, maybe we'll move up. But as of right now, I think it's very good. I have it here just because of those reasons I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't agree with you, but I accept that as your opinion. So next, about 2 years later, I think?
Yeah, 2 years later, in 2008, we get the most celebrated comic book movie of all time.
Yeah.
One of two of the first comic book movies I ever saw.
Really?
Like, ever. And this was one that my dad was really excited to show to me. This one and another movie we'll get onto this list is The Dark Knight. Obviously, every single person I bet listening to this, or just anybody in general when they hear The Dark Knight, thinks of Heath Ledger as the Joker. Obviously right out of the gate, his performance as the Joker is no short of astounding.
Yeah.
Like, that is the main takeaway that you will see with this movie, is that the mannerisms, the makeup, like, everything about this character, his scheme, everything about it is so well crafted that it just completely shines in this movie. Not saying that the rest of the movie is bad by any means, but that is really just the entire selling point whenever somebody brings up this movie.
Yeah, no, Ledger's Joker is the best. I mean, I've seen 3 live-action Jokers, and one of them was Barry Keoghan. And Heath Ledger's the best one. He's better than Nicholson, and he's better than Keoghan. And just the thing is with this movie, and I do really like this movie, but the thing is that it simultaneously feels far too connected and far too separate from the series as a whole. It has almost none of the like call it like it doesn't carry the same story forward. Liam Neeson doesn't come back in this movie.
Yeah, well, he dies again. He does again in the last one.
And yet, like there's and even like Scarecrow, the Cillian Murphy character, is back in this movie for like one scene where he's turned into like a street criminal. Which doesn't make any sense.
I actually like that part.
I liked it, and I think it would have been a great scene if Cillian Murphy wasn't the Scarecrow in the last movie, because he comes back in these weird bit roles over the next Dark Knight movies, and it's like I thought, what happened? Like, why?
Well, what's crazy? I actually kind of like that part. I like that they brought him back.
I don't.
Actually, if it shows like a populated like criminal centric Gotham that like. Even though like he wasn't like taken out at the end of Batman Begins, like he's still like an occurrence, like he's still a threat, that he's still a criminal that really shows up in Gotham. And towards the opening scene, you really see like he's still there, like he's still causing trouble. When we get into the Dark Knight Rises, like he's someone that's still like much of an occurrence.
Yeah, it really did feel like a comic book thing, where they'll be like, oh, by the way, because these things were syndicated in such mass quantities, like a short run of a comic series is like 60 comics.
Yeah.
And it's like, at a certain point, they have to bring back some of the old villains, because you can't do 100 unique Batman villains. It's too hard.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of unique Batman villains on the comics,
for sure. But at a certain point, you have to bring back the Joker. You have to bring back the Riddler. You have to bring back the Penguin. And so, yeah, they're going to come back, even if they do come back in minor roles. I just don't think it worked too well for this particular movie, which felt like it was trying so hard to distance itself from Batman Begins, and for the most part succeeds at that.
Yeah, I would disagree with you on that one. I feel like everything that was set up in Batman Begins, like his origin, I feel like you see that here in full set. Like Batman establishes himself as a figure in Gotham City. Obviously, you get the relationship with Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon, which I know we didn't talk about this previously, but like his relationship with Gary Oldman, especially in this movie, I think is really well done, as well as obviously his relationship with the Joker.
Yeah.
This movie probably has one of my favorite openings to any movie, and I love how this movie, like the Dark Knight trilogy as a whole, but this movie in particular, they don't necessarily pull from the comics. They pull from things like Heat and The Wire, which I think is actually really cool to pull from if you're going to do a Batman movie.
Yeah.
And the opening heist scene is like, again, one of my favorite opening scenes of all time, to where like the Joker is one of the henchmen. He stays quiet, but you don't know it's him. And so he takes off the mask. It's like, I believe whatever doesn't kill you makes you stranger. It's a great line.
Yeah.
And, he takes like the school bus, which, you can pinpoint, like he crashes a school bus and is able to miraculously get back in a line full of other school buses and they don't check it.
Right.
But yeah, there's some moments like that in this movie that are kind of left lingering, like when Batman and Rachel dive off the building, but the Joker's still up in the party.
Yeah.
I just think there's just a lot of great moments, like Joker's scheme with the two boats, to where you have actual criminals on one boat.
Oh yeah.
And you have people on the other side who are the actual criminals who are willing to kill the other.
Exactly. It's a prisoner's dilemma.
Yeah, it's a prisoner's dilemma, and it's really one that really it's an interesting dynamic, because which ones are the actual criminals? You have people who are actually locked up in prison, then you have average people, both locked on a boat, both with a choice to detonate a bomb on the other one and kill the other people.
Right.
Which ones are the ones that are actually going to do it? And as it's revealed, neither one of them do it.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite scenes in this trilogy. Probably my favorite scene in this trilogy is that scene. Because it, again, reinforces that idea that Gotham City is actually the star of these Batman comics. It's not really Batman. It's Gotham City. Like,
yeah,
the Gotham City breeds these villains, and these villains try to turn Gotham City in on themselves. And at a certain point, Batman has to trust that the people of Gotham aren't going to blow up either ship until they reach where eventually both of them will blow up. And then Batman can essentially undo that rig and prevent them from blowing up.
Yeah, that's what I love about Gotham City. It's just like a setting, especially like in this movie in particular. It's like, it's a city you would never ever want to visit, but you love watching movies set in this place.
Yeah,
and it's just like all these criminal. Like that's actually kind of like why I love seeing Cillian Murphy in all three of these movies, is because not just because he was a villain, a primary antagonist in Batman Begins, but also his appearance shows that these criminals not only were already out there, but are still causing trouble in this like criminally populated Gotham.
Right.
And you see like even like Cillian Murphy's like tied up like when Batman gets in the Batmobile and stuff. and it's just like, you know, like the I don't wear hockey masks or the I don't wear hockey pads scene. It's just like he's still out there, and that's one of the things that I think Matt Reeves' Batman did really well, as like also to where it shows that like all these criminals are just already out there. They don't need like these like big grand origin stories. Like they're people, like they're sadistic people already causing trouble. And also in this movie being the Joker and also Two-Face, who I also think should be mentioned because I think Aaron Eckhart's performance as Two-Face is great, and I love the origin that they give him in this movie as well. To where Batman and Rachel kind of have a falling out. Rachel goes off with Harvey Dent, and in the process, Batman tries to save Harvey Dent. Rachel blows up, and half of his face burns off, which is the only time, which I think is fascinating, the only time Christopher Nolan ever used CGI on something.
Is that true?
I think so. The only time he ever used like CGI.
I guess you couldn't just light his face on fire.
Yeah, like he's like for the burn, like here with his butt. It's the only time I think he ever used CGI, which I mean he had to.
Yeah. And, no, Christopher Nolan does everything practically.
Yeah, and then also you have the Joker manipulating Two-Face. You have the Joker manipulating the people on the boats. Like that's just what makes not only the Joker a great villain, but also Two-Face a great villain. Where Two-Face or Harvey Dent starts to question the world around him as well, which motivates him to doing what he's doing. And obviously leads to the death of Harvey Dent at the end of this movie, to where Batman goes off and basically Bruce Wayne quits being Batman by the end of it. Right. The last one was how he became. This one is how the bat fell. And I think that's also really interesting, to where Commissioner Gordon, like they know he saved, like Batman saves his son, but in the process he kills someone. And Bruce Wayne, at the end of the last film, swore he wouldn't do that.
Right. Rachel, by the way, is played in this one by Maggie Gyllenhaal. We mentioned that they changed the casting. She's Maggie Gyllenhaal now. Much better in this movie.
Yeah. I think she does a solid job. I mean, compared to Katie Holmes, I think she did a much better job. But you know, the character of Rachel Dawes is a tricky one, just because of how I don't love when Batman has a separate love interest. But I feel like if you're gonna do it, I feel like these movies are the way to do it. The Dark Knight to me is a comic book masterpiece. It's still one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. There's a reason it's the most celebrated, not just because of Heath Ledger's incredible performance as the Joker, but because of all the other moving parts. It's not just because of Heath Ledger's performance, it's because of the Joker's scheme, the way that he causes every single person around them, not only to question the world around them, but also to think about their actions as well. Yeah. And I think that's really interesting. So for me, I'm throwing this one up in the S tier above Memento. It's a great one. I've seen this movie about like 3 times. And when it comes to like my introduction to comic book movies, it was Batman 89. And I actually watched The Dark Knight before I watched Batman Begins, because my dad really wanted me to experience these movies for the first time to get into comic book movies. Because my dad's a big fan of Michael Keaton as Batman. And he also liked the Dark Knight trilogy as well.
Yeah, and I saw this for the first time. I saw one scene of this near the end of the movie. It's during the highway like road chase where the Joker just starts shooting cars with guns. I saw that scene out of the corner of my eye on a small CRT television in a pizza place I happened to be at. So, you know, different experiences.
Yeah, you want to know something interesting about the truck? It says like there's like something laughter, but it says they write an S on the side of it.
So it's slaughter.
So it says slaughter. That's funny. I'm surprised it wasn't the interrogation scene as well. One of the greatest.
No, it was also. I think I was like I caught both of those scenes. In the pizza place. Actually, they were just playing the movie, and I didn't watch all of it.
Yeah, and also there's also the caveat to this movie: Heath Ledger's Joker is left dangling upside down, and I think the plan was to have him continue, and then Heath Ledger tragically passed away. So there is that as well. There is some obviously there's some moments left lingering, like we said earlier, like that being a new example. But for this movie, I loved it. I've seen it like I think 3 or 4 times now. I love it. I think it's great. I wouldn't I'm not the one that's saying that this will always be the best comic book movie, but it's one that every time I go back to and rewatch, there's always there's just so many things I love about it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of a comic book movie like off the top of my head that I like better than this one. Maybe there is one that I'm just not thinking about. But yeah, this is S tier for me, below Memento, but still very, very good movie.
Yeah, and I guess moving on to his follow-up, which after he basically became a living legend with The Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan kind of returns back to his original movie formatting. And for me, a movie that, on a day that you ask me, might be my favorite movie of all time, and that's Inception. Yeah,
that's fair. It's number 1 on your Letterboxd top 4.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, no, I think that's fair to say. And Inception stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Tom Hardy, Elliot Page, and
I think Cillian Murphy's in this movie.
Cillian Murphy. Is there one more that I'm forgetting? I don't know. Whatever.
there's that one guy who's in like every movie that's in it.
Um,
I forgot the guy. Michael Caine, I know, is in it briefly.
oh yeah, yeah. Michael Caine's in a lot of these movies for some reason.
My dad actually whispered to me. I think it was when we watched Tenet, and we'll talk about this when we get to Tenet. But my dad turns to me and he's like, "There's two things that make a great Nolan movie: complex plots and Michael Caine." And I was like, "Yep." I was like,
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with you. But yeah,
the guy I was forgetting was Ken Watanabe.
Ken Watanabe, that's who
Who
it was.
was very good in this movie.
Yeah.
He spends most of it dying, but he's still quite good.
Yeah,
There's another character later in the filmography that will spend a whole movie dying that is not as good as Ken Watanabe.
yeah. With this movie, like as I said, I absolutely love this movie.
Oh yeah, same.
I think that this is an example of a movie that's complex, not confusing,
Right.
for all the ways that work.
Yeah, I
because
agree.
it's a movie, like, it's essentially a heist movie. They're trying to implant an idea. Like, there's this idea that
Yeah.
you can go into dreams,
Right.
and this group of like people pulling a heist, they're implanting an idea in someone's dream.
right.
And I think that whole thing's interesting. The whole movie, they kind of explain the rules in really creative ways, to where there's a scene where Leo DiCaprio and Elliot Page are sitting, and just the table everywhere's exploding, and they walk around, and then Elliot Page recognizes a bridge, and they establish, then you don't know what's real and what's not real, and the only way to get out of it is if you die or get injured.
Exactly.
And there's a scene where Leo DiCaprio, I think it's the opening, where he gets pushed into a bathtub, and in the dream there's just water just spewing out of everywhere.
Yeah.
There's so many creative visuals, and of course everyone knows the hallway fight where they're all in the van, and the van that they're in flips around because they were just in a car crash, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt is going down a hotel hallway, and the entire room starts rotating, all of which was done practically, built in a studio.
They built a machine where you could put the set in the machine and it would rotate the set.
Yeah, incredible sequence. One of my favorite sequences in any movie.
It's probably the best that Christopher Nolan has ever shot, for sure.
Yeah.
Like,
To where it's just like, that's such an interesting way. There's a lot of James Bond influences here, like obviously like the snow kind of chases where they're like going down like on snow speeders. Like, it feels plucked straight out of like The Spy Who Loved Me.
Yeah.
Which I love. And
the idea of the movie, just, I don't know if we expanded upon it, is you could go into somebody's dreams and like destroy things in their dreams to make them forget things. And like you can kind of manipulate their mind in the dream. What the Ken Watanabe character, he wants Leo DiCaprio to go into Cillian Murphy, who's the heir to this large
or go into his dream, not
company.
go into him.
Yeah, well, yeah. Specifically go into his dream. He's like the heir to this large tech fortune, and he wants Leo to implant the idea of disbanding the company when he gets it, because that idea of implanting an idea into somebody is called Inception, and in the community of people who go into people's dreams, it's considered to be impossible. But Leonardo DiCaprio, his character, is very, very intent on the fact that it's real and possible, and that he's done it.
Yeah, and you also get the stuff. I remember his name well, like Dom Cobb. I feel like
Dom Cobb.
Yeah, I feel like of all of his original characters, I feel like he's the one that stands out the most. Also because they give so much depth to like what happened with his wife.
Yeah,
and like her death was like, was it suicide? Was it not? And then you also get the thing of like him, is he able to see his kids again?
Right.
And then you also get, I love the dynamic between Tom Hardy and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Like, I feel like that's some of the funniest things, some of the funniest like dialogue that Christopher Nolan's ever written. And then every time, like what I love about this movie in particular, like every time the dialogue and exposition slows down, some of the more creative aspects kind of pep up a little bit. Like the second Tom Hardy and Leo DiCaprio start talking, there's a chase. Every time that like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's like, no, they're not talking, there's the entire hallway is rotating. Or every time like Leo DiCaprio's not doing something, he stops talking, water just spews out of everywhere.
Yeah.
Like every time that stuff slows down, it peps up to keep it entertaining. So it's not just like, oh, I'm so bored, I don't want to keep hearing this stuff. It keeps you engaged all throughout the movie, and it's one to where there's complex ideas, but if you look at the plot, I would actually say this is a relatively easy movie to follow. It adds that as sort of a complex, in sort of like a complexity that I think really elevates this movie to where the movie at its core, like the main concept, like I guess like it was easy to explain, but because they're going into dreams, you can't tell what's real, what's not. That's the thing that I think really elevates this one. Right. That ultimately leads to a third act to where, in order to tell if you're in if you're in a dream or if you're in the real world, you get a little spindle or a little topper.
You have some tell. It doesn't have like Leo's is specifically a top, like a spinning top.
Yeah,
And
the spinning top. And if it keeps going, that means you're still in the dream. If it falls over, that means you're in reality.
Yeah.
And it gets to a scene to where it assumes he's done. He gets off of a plane. He goes home. He reunites with Michael Caine's character, and he's able to see his kids. And he leaves the spindle, and it spins there, and it cuts to black. So you don't know whether it stayed or whether it fell over.
Right.
To the question whether he's able to, whether he saw his kids or whether he didn't.
Right. And my favorite part about that scene is that it doesn't matter because he spins it, right? Because presumably he spins it and then you'd imagine, oh, he wants to know whether or not this is real or not. But he doesn't care about the spinner. He goes to see his kids first before seeing whether the spinner.
Yeah.
So whether or not he sees his kids, the movie has hit an emotional conclusion.
Yeah. And whether he did or whether he didn't, you have plenty of evidence as to why.
Right. I personally think he did. I personally think it was real. I think that
I thought he didn't. I feel like he didn't.
I thought that the top fell over. I think the top fell over.
Yeah. What makes you think that?
It's just that it's tough to be, because I don't have an exact pinpoint onto it, but the parts that take place in the dreams have this weird quality to them that something isn't exactly real. And that could just be because you know that they're real, but even in the opening scene, something just feels off about the whole situation that he's in. And like, whether it's the way it's shot, the way it's like weirdly empty or like ethereal, or just the fact that how would you even get into the situation in the first place? I don't think that the final scene kind of has that quality. I think it's played a little bit too straight for it to be a dream sequence.
Yeah, for me, I actually think it didn't, because you know how they established the rule that whenever you're in a dream, people like start looking at you. As he gets off the plane, everyone starts looking at him, and he's in this case after he separates from the team. They never clearly establish whether they pull out or they don't, and so he's on this plane going home, but they don't establish whether he's come out of the dream or not. They don't show that. And he's on the plane, everybody's just staring at him. He goes home, he spins the dial. My prediction is that it keeps going. But this is a movie, either way, you have plenty of evidence for each side, and it's one, I don't want the answer to this. I don't want the actual answer.
And Nolan was actually asked about this, and he said it doesn't matter.
Yeah, he said he has an answer, but he'll never say it.
Right. Which I appreciate. This was a movie, this actually was written by Nolan, like by Christopher Nolan solo, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Typically, I prefer his scripts when they're co-written with Jonathan Nolan, but this one's an exception. I really do like the screenplay.
Yeah, this movie, like I said earlier, it's S tier. I think it's his best work. I think it's probably his best work yet. I have an S tier above The Dark Knight and for Memento, which might be controversial because I know a lot of people love The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
But for me, like with this and with Inception and Die Hard are back and forth as to whether those are my favorite movies of all time. It's incredible. I've seen this movie twice. I'm planning on seeing it again. Yeah, absolutely. This is one that like I do plan on showing. Like whenever people ask me, "Oh, what movie should I watch?" If you haven't seen Inception, go watch Inception.
Yeah, it's the top for me. It's top of S tier. Above The Prestige, above Memento, above The Dark Knight. I really do love this movie. Yeah.
And yeah, speaking of movies that I'm sure we're going to have very differing thoughts on this one.
I've been waiting to talk about this.
The epic conclusion, as it's called, to the Dark Knight trilogy. And that is The Dark Knight Rises.
I hate this movie.
And I'm the opposite. I actually really like this movie.
I think this movie is quite bad. Basically, this is a bit. It has a bit more of a time skip than Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. Essentially, Batman Bruce Wayne, he's been retired for quite a long time. He's essentially taken on this sort of great Jay Gatsby role, where he just holds these large charity galas and then never shows up to them and just kind of hides out in his room doing stuff.
Yeah,
it's not clear what he does.
Well, I guess it's like the end of The Dark Knight. You'd see why, just because like he kind of goes out into hiding.
No, the exact like thing that he's doing, it makes some sense.
Yeah, it's where it's like he's basically responsible for Harvey Dent's death.
And there's a scene in which they're at one of these big galas, and Alfred tells one of the like there's a woman there. He tells her to take this plate of food that he's set out and like go upstairs and put it on a table. Because Bruce Wayne would then go and eat it, right? Obviously. And then she goes up and she puts the food on the table, and then Bruce Wayne comes out and she acts like she's just seen Jesus Christ. It's really just a super dumb scene. I don't like that scene, and I think that sets the tone for the whole movie of just like, I don't care. I've stopped caring. He's not doing anything new. It feels like we've completely eliminated The Dark Knight as like a movie that took place in this trilogy. I would love to see him logically compound on the lessons that he's learned, but it feels like instead of learning lessons from The Dark Knight, he just went back to how he was originally, which kind of just spoils the ending of The Dark Knight, of just like, oh, he's become more mature. He's kind of gone over this curve of, at the beginning, he thinks he's mature because he's not Batman. And then throughout, like, like at the end of Batman Begins, he's immature because he wants to be Batman. But by the end of The Dark Knight, he's mature because he realizes he doesn't need Batman, you know?
Yeah.
That arc is satisfying. And then this movie ruins it completely.
Yeah, I would actually disagree with that. I actually think that this was a pretty good follow-up in terms of the ending of that movie. I understand some things had to be changed, and I think part of that was because of the death of Heath Ledger. They had to shift, and I think especially making Bane as the villain, I think there's some things that had to be shifted around a little bit. But I think on a thematic level is that Batman in the previous two movies was established as someone who has a moral compass. You saw in Batman Begins, like we talked about earlier, that's where he establishes his moral compass, that he doesn't kill people. In The Dark Knight, where you have this huge threat and the Joker showing up, and in the process, it ends up leading to him being responsible for the death of Harvey Dent. And because of that, he goes out into hiding because obviously Harvey Dent was a big persona in the city, but also Batman to kind of shine a light on him that he did the one thing he was sworn not to do.
Right.
And in The Dark Knight Rises, you kind of see that he's kind of like he's kind of reclusive because of that, and also because of the death of Rachel as well. And I think including Bane as the villain, I mean, on a script level, this is probably Nolan's sloppiest script. I can admit that.
One of
I
them.
mean, sure, like he climbs out, like sure, Bruce Wayne climbs out of like the huge pit. He's able to go to Gotham, right? His Catwoman's down there, and is able to know exactly where she is at the exact point. Like there's parts about that you can nitpick here and there. But for me, every time I watch this movie, the epic grandeur, the actual conclusion to the trilogy itself, I actually think was really well done. I love Tom Hardy's performance as Bane. I love the voice. I think it's great.
I didn't like it.
Really? You didn't like it?
I didn't like Tom. I thought Tom Hardy was bad in this
I like
movie.
Tom Hardy's Bane.
I thought it was good.
I did like Anne Hathaway's Catwoman though. I thought she was a good character.
I also didn't like that.
You didn't like her? Oh my god! You really didn't like this movie?
No,
did
I really didn't like this movie. The new characters that they introduce don't do anything really. It's like the movie's more interested in like Harvey Dent and the continuing legacy of Harvey Dent than it is anything relating to Batman, Catwoman, or Bane. Bane has no character.
He kind of does. He has like the whole origin to where it's like, you know, he was being trained by those people.
Yeah, but his origin is one big red herring for a twist that doesn't even make sense.
Oh yeah, because it was the one person that climbed out.
Right. The idea is
it's set up to be him, but it's Talia al Ghul, and he was the one that was protecting her.
Exactly. It's like this prison where every so often you have to like try to climb out of it, and if you climb out of it, then you're free. Which is I don't know. And the whole idea is like Bruce Wayne like goes to that prison because Bane sends him there, and like Bruce Wayne has been pretty clearly physically disabled by his work as Batman. He walks around with a cane. He has a bad leg. And so like there's no way that he'll be able to get out of this hole. And it's set up as like there's this big legend of that there's only one person who's ever made it out of here alive. And that whole movie, it's like, oh, it's Bane. It's obviously Bane. And then it's not Bane, and it's Talia al Ghul. And which, like, okay, you're at least trying to subvert my expectations, but you've forgotten one simple thing. It doesn't make sense, and now I've stopped caring. Like, you aren't doing anything with these twists, with these characters. Even Anne Hathaway's arc as Catwoman feels unsatisfying. It just feels like they're rushing through it to get to the point where Batman and Catwoman can like be friends again. And it's like, it's like who cares? I don't care about Catwoman, really.
I thought she was an interesting character. I think she had like a rapport with Bane and Batman.
I don't think that anybody here is interesting. They've skipped over everything that they introduced in The Dark Knight except for Harvey Dent, and it's like Harvey Dent was the third most interesting thing in that movie. Why is he the thing that we want to keep going? Because you're not adding anything new to Batman. You're not adding anything new to any of these characters. And I know that you couldn't have Joker in it, and you didn't need Joker in it, but Joker was the only one that was asking difficult questions in this entire trilogy, and you're gonna forego that? I don't understand that at all.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Bane poses a threat. And I love how you said that Bane doesn't really do much. He literally broke Batman's back.
Yeah.
I mean, he did do that. Like, I know there's some part. I think some of it's just because Heath Ledger passed away, and I think they were supposed to do a third one with the Joker, but they couldn't, and so I think they just replaced Bane as the villain. Which, fun fact, one of Glenn Powell's early roles was getting his face smashed into a keyboard by Tom Hardy. Which
was that really him?
Yeah, and his face actually got smashed in because Tom Hardy was so into the character. Glenn Powell was sitting there, and his face actually gets smashed into a keyboard. And afterwards, he was like, "Oh my god," he was like actually so into it. But I don't know, like for me, like on a script, script wise, yes, objectively script wise, this is his worst movie. But every time I watch this movie, I love the epic grandeur. I love so much of the characters. I love the story, and every time I watch this movie, it's like that stuff just becomes the quiet. Like every time this movie has to have an emotional punch, I think it delivers that. In particular, like Alfred at Bruce's grave, or like his parents' grave, saying "I failed you." I think was a great scene. Yeah. Or even the addition of Joseph Gordon-Levitt, a side character. Sure.
that the ending to Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character,
Robin,
is one. It's like literally he goes to like I don't know. He's like filing some sort of permit or something.
Yeah.
And the person there's like, oh, you should use your given name more often. And he's like, really? And he's like, yeah, I really like the name of Robin. I was this close to punching my TV and throwing it into
or like
the
when he finds
body of water.
when he finds the Batcave.
Yeah.
Or like when the Batwing blows up, and then the end, it's just like Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle go on living.
Yeah.
I like this movie, and also speaking of Cillian Murphy, he does show up in this one. It's like a criminal court justice.
That's his best scene.
Where he takes over a courtroom. And
essentially, Bane's criminal underworld has overrun the city because they again feel the need to make Bane the scariest villain, so they actually put him in a position of power, which isn't the point of Batman. But whatever, I digress. He's taken over the city, and Cillian Murphy's taken over this courtroom, and he's asking, like they keep bringing in people, and he's like, death or execution, and then he lets them choose, and then or death or exile, right? And then
where they have to walk on the ice,
and then they bring in they bring in Gary Oldman to him, and there's like death or exile, and he's like death, and he's like very well, death by exile, and that's my favorite scene of the movie.
Yeah, so I love the opening. I think is great. There's a lot. Do you not like the opening, with the plane turning upside down, and then all the guys going in there?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I really like this movie, and I feel like that scene also kind of showed that Cillian Murphy is like him showing up just shows how criminally populated Gotham is, and that he's still a recurring threat.
For me, him showing up shows how much him and Christopher Nolan are on good terms, which is a good thing. So for me,
I have an interesting backstory. When I first watched this one, my dad was really excited to show this one to me because I love The Dark Knight, and then I watched Batman Begins to get caught up, and then we watched The Dark Knight Rises. My dad actually I think he's told me this is his favorite of the three. And when I first watched this one, he really likes the twist with Talia al Ghul, and he kept showing that. But Alfred and Bruce get into a fight, and the whole movie I was asking about why is Alfred missing. And I wasn't paying attention to what was going on. And so that twist happened. And then watching it later, I was like, yeah, I don't think it's great.
Yeah.
And I just always remember it for that. And this movie probably has the worst death scene of all his movies, to where Talia goes just sitting in a truck, and she goes and she just closes her eyes super quickly, out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Again, this movie has problems, I'll admit that, but every time I watch it, it just becomes a quieter side, and a lot of my favorite aspects kind of become I feel like the good far outweighs the bad in my mind. I don't think this is a bad movie. I think it's a good movie. I have it at the top of the B tier for me. I'm sure you're going to have this a lot lower than me.
This is the F tier for me.
Oh my god.
Welcome to the F
tier. Way lower than mine.
I don't like this movie. This was the first one when I started doing my project of watching all these movies so that I'd be prepared for this this podcast. After Batman Begins, which was obviously I watched before this one, this was the next one that I didn't like.
Yeah, I had a feeling. I remember we were in class, and I told you, I was like, I don't think you're gonna like this movie. And you came to me like a couple days later. I hate this movie. And I was
Yeah.
like, yep, there he goes.
I watched most of the movies that I don't like here, like near the back end of this watching situation, which was interesting. But yeah, no, I don't like this movie. I think the only good Batman movie that he's ever really done was The Dark Knight. And that sucks because Batman's a cool character. I like Batman 89.
Yeah, I disagree. Obviously, like we've said, like I do have this movie in beats here. I think it's actually pretty good, but I will acknowledge script wise, it's not the best, but
Yeah.
I enjoy a lot about this movie. So
Yeah, no, I kind of understand where you're coming from. I just didn't see any of the things that you said you liked about it in the movie. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I just
Yeah, agree to disagree. I guess.
I mean, we'll have to because you're not changing my mind.
Yeah. Hopefully this next one we kind of have somewhere. This movie, especially the last couple years, like after I watched this movie for the first time, has gotten hyped up so much.
Yeah.
A lot of it I get. Some of it I question a little bit, and that's Interstellar.
Yeah.
I'm sure a bunch of people like whenever I talk about Christopher, whenever I ask, have you seen Christopher Nolan movies? It's either Oppenheimer,
Right.
The Dark Knight, Inception, or this. There are people that people know.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Yeah, no, there was a very long while where the most watched movies on Letterboxd were, it was like Barbie, Fight Club, Parasite, and then Interstellar. And there was a very long time where Interstellar was the most popular movie on Letterboxd that I had never seen.
Really?
Yeah, that was a very long time. I mean, because at a certain point it overtook Parasite because it was re-released in theaters. So people went to go see it. So even after I saw Parasite, it was still the most popular one that I hadn't seen. And I watched it, recently for this project, and I really liked it.
Yeah, I also really like this one as well. I feel like of all of Christopher Nolan's movies, if you call him an emotionless director, like of course, like Inception, I think has a lot of emotion with Dom Cobb and the relationship between his wife and his kids. But with this movie in particular, you get to that scene where Matthew McConaughey, they screw up on this planet where time works differently.
Right.
When they're in outer space, and it finds like he missed like over 20 years with his kids, and he's just sitting there watching all the footage they send him, and he's just breaking down. I had to pause this movie because I was crying so badly. Like, it's heartbreaking. And Matthew McConaughey's performance, I think, is probably my favorite performance of his.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy he's returning to acting this year, like as a star, like in a lead role.
Yeah.
Because like movies like this, you watch and you just forget how good of an actor he is.
Right.
And I think the story at its core to where like the Earth is at a point to where it's run out of like it can't make like you can't plant things and make food, which obviously part of living is eating, and when you're on an Earth that's essentially dying, you have to go off into a different planet, and that's where Matthew McConaughey's character gets recruited to go off to this planet, but they have to be careful because time works differently in space, kind of like I mentioned, so he has to leave his family in order to do that.
They have these 3 planets that are all rotating around this supermassive black hole, and the thing is, the closer you get to the black hole, the bigger the time dilation is. So they get to this planet that's like, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like a minute there is like it was like an hour there is like 20 years or something. I don't know.
Something like that. And they do something where they screw up, and that's what leads to
the planet is much more dangerous than they imagined, and they get hit by this giant tidal wave.
Yeah.
And they're down and out for like an hour. I think that Christopher Nolan is not necessarily an emotionless director so much as he is an emotionless writer.
I would disagree with both, like personally.
When his movies don't have performances that carry the emotion to the performance, it's a problem, and the movies can get really, really bad. No one is bringing the emotion in The Dark Knight Rises.
Oh, come on. No, Michael Caine. And Michael Caine at the grave.
You know what? If Michael Caine...
At least for me. Like, Michael, when he's breaking down at the grave saying, I failed your parents because then he let Bruce Wayne die. Or he seems like he lets his die.
The problem is that doesn't feel like... That felt like
I love that. I like
Nolan
that scene.
Was trying to bring the emotion in the writing, but I don't think Michael Caine carries that scene. There isn't a lot of emotion there. One of my biggest problem with Memento even is that Guy Pearce is not a very emotional character. I don't think he brings a lot of emotion to that. And most of the emotion that we find is through the side characters, which really elevate the movie. I mean, Guy Pearce has gone on record to say that he doesn't like his own performance in that movie. And I definitely understand where people are coming from when they say he's emotionless. And we will get to a point later on, where there are a couple of movies
Oh, I can see. I can see which ones you're gonna talk about.
that I think definitely are emotionless. This movie, Matthew McConaughey is just so good in this role that he brings the emotion there, and he's the reason that the emotion exists.
Was it Cooper?
Yes, I believe his name was Cooper in the movie.
So I was thinking of 2001: A Space Odyssey for a second.
Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's.
I was thinking either Cooper or Dave. I was like, oh yeah, Dave's from 2001: Space Odyssey.
Dave's from 2001. Yeah, maybe we should do Stanley Kubrick. Yeah. So, Interstellar. I do really like this movie. I think the one thing it gets really well, like it gets this really correct, is the scale.
Oh, absolutely.
Everything is massive. And not only massive in the sense of they're going off-world to these giant planets and the black hole is enormous, but also the time, like the scale of time. And Nolan loves playing with time. Almost all of his movies, except for the mainstream studio pictures, like the Batman movies, are all told non-linearly, with us cutting back and forth between these different periods of time to kind of try to contextualize and recontextualize all senses of time in that direction. And in this movie, we have these documentary clips from that we learn are a documentary made about how they left Earth in universe.
Yeah.
And those play like at the beginning of the movie. Just like, that's super cool.
Yeah.
And we get to see those played also near the end of the movie. That documentary is like playing on a TV, and you're like, oh, I know that part. That's from the documentary, from the movie. And the scale of time here and the time warp, and like you said, the scene where he's watching his kids grow up through the messages that they send to him.
Yeah, it's where he was absent all of it.
It's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking.
It's so good.
Like I don't usually cry in movies, but that was one like that obviously might have been the hardest I've cried during a movie.
Yeah, I don't typically cry.
The first two, they're like, I love the stuff with Matt Damon. I thought that was actually a really fun cameo. I didn't know anything about it when I watched it, and I thought his role actually served it.
And Matt Damon.
Anne Hathaway's character was decent. I thought she was a little too scientific at times. But you also get, Jessica Chastain. You get Casey Affleck in a small role.
Yeah.
I think they do well. What holds this one back for me, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of hate for this.
Okay.
When I first watched this movie, I hated the ending
Really?
so much. I hated it
the
so
ending.
much.
I like the ending.
I thought it was horrible. And the more I thought about it, I was like, was it really that bad? And then I watched it a second time. I feel like the twist, I just feel like it was a little over ambitious to where like he goes in like this hollow world, he's able to see the past, and like he grows up. It doesn't work. It doesn't fully work for me. I feel like the movie aims a little higher than it hit, but I think it still hit a really good spot. But that twist, I think, just kind of like of all of his twists, I just kind of sit there, I'm like, I don't think it quite worked for me. I see what he was trying to do, but I feel like there was some of it that was just like, I don't know if it was quite there. But when I first watched it, I was like, oh, this is dumb.
The ending to this is a lot like the ending to Inception, where regardless of how much it makes sense, it's reached such an emotional conclusion that I don't really care that it doesn't make sense so much. Like, I'm willing to accept that, okay, he goes into the black hole and he's seeing the past, and that's like, that's what he does.
For me, I didn't like that. I didn't like that when I first saw the movie.
Yeah, and it's not scientific at all. But it reaches such an emotional climax and lends itself to such an emotional conclusion that I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I don't think it's like the most satisfying ending to this movie. Like I said, I get mostly what he was trying to do, but like I don't know. I just think I have some minor issues for me when it comes to the ending, but like the rest of the movie, like this is obviously a really good movie. Like you hear Christopher Nolan's doing a sci-fi movie, and you're like, oh, that's gonna look great, and it does.
Yeah, it looks great,
and it's great. I think it's gotten a little overhyped as well, just because of how many people have come and watched it. It's still a really good movie. I have it at the top of A tier. I have it above Batman Begins and The Prestige. Not quite fully S tier just because of the ending, but I've definitely softened on the ending a lot more now. When I first watched it, I hated the ending.
No, this is S tier for me. This is right above Memento, but right below The Prestige. I really appreciate what Nolan did here, because this is not a super ambitious sci-fi thing that he's doing. He's putting his own twist on it, and I have yet to see a sci-fi movie that's done the same things with time as he's done. But just like very much, okay, we're going to go out to space and we're going to go to all these planets and we're going to get sucked into a black hole. People have been doing that since the 50s. He does it in such a way that makes it almost the definitive movie for that genre of just like, if you want to get what it's about, you watch this movie. I think that's really, really impressive. And I love sci-fi. I have a
Oh, I do too.
massive soft spot for sci-fi.
Yeah, I love sci-fi as well.
Yeah, mostly because of my grandmother. But so it doesn't. It's just that it does the sci-fi so well in this movie, and even if it strays away from it's trying to be scientific and then it kind of loses its way halfway through, in order to make a better movie, I'm okay with that. And I think it's just really, really, really good.
Yeah, I think it's really good too. Save for the ending, like I mentioned, but the rest of the movie, I think it's just the first 2/3 alone. I think are some of the best 2/3 of any of his movies.
Yeah,
I think his ending, the twist, in my mind, I think is probably one of his worst endings. But that's just me.
My least favorite ending is
the Dark Knight Rises.
The Dark Knight Rises. Yeah. And it's not that it doesn't have competition, but it's still my least favorite. Maybe Following didn't have a great ending either, but whatever.
Yeah. Maybe if I rewatch this one, I'll appreciate it more on the ending. I feel there's a couple of these movies. I mean, maybe if I rewatch it, I'll like them just a little bit more. But
yeah,
for me, like everything, like the great things about this, I think are some of the best he's ever done. Doesn't fully stick the landing for me.
Okay. That's reasonable. I definitely hear the complaints about the ending. I don't think it impacted me as much as just the fact that I wanted it to have a better story and the ending gave it a better story. So I was more okay with it. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying. But yeah. Moving on.
So yeah, the next one on this list, which I just found recently, was actually nominated for Best Picture, and people were hoping that Christopher Nolan would get his first Oscar for this one.
Was it really nominated? Okay, so
that's Dunkirk, his first of two war. Well, I don't know if you would call Oppenheimer a war film, but his true war film, I think.
There's a trend that I'm noticing here, where every time we do a director who's like a prestigious director, they have one movie that neither of us know was nominated for Best Picture, and when we find out, at least I'm incredulous. Like, I'm super surprised that it got Best Picture because I think it sucks.
I think I think this movie's good. Like,
I hate this movie.
Yeah, you'll hear me say this a lot. This movie exists purely just to put you on the beach of when this movie took place back in, like, was it World War One? I think World War Two,
1940. I think.
Yeah, World War Two. It's basically sent to put you on that beach, put you with these soldiers, put you with the people that were basically there when this war happened. I know the big criticism of this movie is that the characters are emotionally distant, some of which I can see. You have, Kenneth Branagh and Tom Hardy in small roles.
Are they emotionally distant, or are they non-existent?
Yeah, I don't know. For me, I appreciated a lot of this movie on a filmmaking aspect. I feel like he captured a lot of the time period and everything that took place. Obviously, like, you get Harry Styles in a role, in a role, which I know.
I don't understand how Harry Styles is the best part of this movie. That's really surprising to me.
For me, the best part of this movie was actually the father character and how he was written. The guy that's on the boat.
Oh yeah.
Who's not just he's not portrayed as someone who's like a hero, but he's someone that just sees an opportunity to do the right thing in a time that's obviously, like, very devastating in human history. Mm-hmm. And he's just a guy on a boat who just who brings a couple soldiers on his boat. Not praised as like this gigantic hero, but just a guy who just chooses to do the right thing. And I actually thought people who say that all the characters are distant, that was the one for me that I actually really latched onto. And I really appreciated that part of the movie. And then you also get, some moments of victory here and there. You get a couple of great war sequences. There's a lot in this movie that I really appreciate, but though I do get some of the criticisms a little bit.
So when we did David Fincher, we were discussing The Killer. And I think I brought up the point that it feels like he was so entrenched in trying to make something in his style, like almost a style guide for him, that he forgot to also make a movie out of it. That's how I feel about this movie. This movie is the essence of Christopher Nolan. You can apply the styling of this movie to any movie, and it'll look like it was directed by Christopher Nolan. I think it's not a movie. I should be feeling something. This movie's emotionless. It's a war drama about one of the most tense periods of World War II, in which there was a solid chance that 300,000 basically kids that they sent off to war in Nazi Germany and were going to die. They were, crowded out by the Nazis on this little beach, and none of the governments could get anything to them to get them out of there, and they were going to kill 300,000? 300,000.
Yeah, 300,000.
300,000 teenagers. And it's like, the historical context of it, this was only like 20 or 30 years removed from World War One, which, you sent all these people into World War One into the most brutal war of all time, this modern war in which nothing happens, no progress is made, and millions of people die. And you go into World War II. This is only about a year out from the beginning of it, and you're starting to realize that we're just going to do the same thing again. And I should be feeling some of that. I should be feeling some betrayal, some fear, some anger, something. I don't. I feel nothing when I watch this movie. None of the characters are bringing any sort of emotion. There's one character that brings any emotion to it, and he's played by Harry Styles. I don't think the father brings anything to it.
I like this character.
This is an emotionless script with emotionless actors doing. The main character is played by Fionn Whitehead, and I have not seen anything else he's in. He is terrible in this movie. He's so bad. When the characters are supposed to have emotions, they don't. And when they're not supposed to have emotions, they also don't. This movie has Cillian Murphy do nothing for 2.5 hours. He's just like there, not adding anything. You have Cillian Murphy. What are you doing?
Like Tom Hardy he's in a plane the whole movie.
Tom Hardy in a plane, also doing nothing, kind of just mumbling along the whole movie. Everyone's mumbling. The sound mix in this movie is atrocious. Christopher Nolan has suddenly lost the ability to deliver a competent sound mix. I don't know what's up with that. I can't hear any of the people talking, but the music and the artillery is like deafening me.
We'll talk about more of that when we get to the next movie.
Yeah, no, I hate this movie. I sincerely, truly hate this movie.
Wow. I appreciate a lot about it. There is a sense that some of the characters are pretty distant. The father character on the boat was one that I think really saved it for me. But yeah, I feel like this is a movie that's technically it's technically brilliant, but it's one that, on a character level, on an emotional level, kind of draws me back. But I really appreciate a movie that puts you like on the beachfront. I don't know. There's some of that I appreciated, but for me, like I have this one in a B tier, but it's low B tier. Like I'm not saying that this is like a great movie or anything, but it's one that I do appreciate. But it's of this movies, this is one that I'm least likely to rewatch.
This is F tier. This is below The Dark Knight Rises. I sincerely don't like anything this movie does. Like I feel like there's very few redeeming qualities. And like I said, it's disappointing that the best performance you could get out of any of the world-class talents you hired, including but not limited to Kenneth Branagh, Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy, and Barry Keoghan, the best performance that you could get out of those 4 guys came from Harry Styles, multiple Styles. And like Barry Keoghan spends this movie dying. The whole movie.
Yeah, I wonder if is it like set in like actual time? I guess they couldn't like.
I don't know if it's set.
Is it like directly adapted from something, or is it just like? Because I get like there's some of it like if it's like not accurate.
I don't know if it's adapted from something or if there are like multiple different like sources on the Dunkirk evacuation that he used to write the script. I don't know if it's not historically accurate or if it's told in real time and this all really did happen in 2 hours.
Yeah, that's
what's important to me is that this movie sucks.
Yeah. I mean, that's some of the thing to me. Like, on a technical level, I appreciate a lot about it. Like I said, not great by any means, but this is a movie that I think does well for what it does. But I just wish it had more of the characters had a journey than what they had.
Yeah, I just wish there was anything here to like salvage from this movie, to take from this movie, but there really is not that much. I really don't like it. It's a shame too, because I love to see directors take a stab at World War II, which is one of the most complicated and almost surreal conflicts in human history, you know?
Because this was at a very specific time.
Right, just the most...
Like a very specific point in World War II.
The most widespread war in the world, which at points can feel like a war on just pure evil, you know?
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of wars that have felt more justified than when you're fighting the Nazis, you know?
Yeah.
It's hard to get better than that. Not better in the sense of like the Nazis are better, but better in the sense of like, how do you find a more justified opponent? And when I see directors do that, I'm interested to see what they bring to the conversation. There's infinite unpacking that you can do on this event, and Christopher Nolan didn't do any of it.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe if I watch this movie again, maybe I'll have those same feelings. But upon first watch, I was just mesmerized by a lot of the things about it. Maybe it's because I watched it on a big screen TV.
Yeah, I didn't. So.
In the dark at home with a bunch of snacks around me. But I don't know. I appreciate a lot about it. Part of me sees why it got nominated for Best Picture, but also part of me sees why it doesn't get it. But I don't know. Like it's teetering B to C. I do have it at the bottom of the B tier for me.
No.
But yeah,
bottom of the F tier for me.
Yeah. This next one on this list is one that I remember vividly. This movie got delayed like 5 different times because of the pandemic. I wanted to see this in theaters. My mom was very adamant, don't see this movie in theaters because I don't want you leaving the house for COVID.
Oh, yeah.
And the movie came out and all I saw was disappointing.
Yeah.
Worst of Christopher Nolan's entire filmography. So I finally watched this movie with my dad December of 2020. And the movie came out, I think like August of 2020. It was supposed to come out in 20 something, like way earlier than that. This movie was supposed to save the theaters, and it failed at that miserably. Yeah. And that's Tenet, his true spy film, unlike Inception, which was inspired by James Bond works. This is Nolan's Bond film in a sense.
Right.
And I was very excited for this movie because it's a Nolan film, it's a spy film, it had trippy, like, backwards moving time elements. All of that sounded like a movie that I was going to love. And like I said with Inception, it was complex, not confusing. And that's what I hoped this movie would be. And in many ways, there's a lot of things in this movie that I really like. But this movie has the problem of not being complex. It is unnecessarily confusing right from the opening scene. And it doesn't even let go until the ending. Like, the entire movie is just confusing. Like, there's a sense the backward moving time stuff is inherently going to be a little bit complex. And I think that's a good thing. And I think Inception showed the strengths of that with the dream. The problem is that the spy stuff, the mission that they're on, was too difficult to follow right from the get-go.
Yeah. I agree with that. It's unnecessarily confusing. Every line of dialogue in this movie is exposition, which means that none of the characters get any sort of character. They're all kind of the same character. It's about this guy played by John David Washington, I believe is the actor's name.
Yeah, John David Washington.
He essentially is recruited into this this organization called Tenet, and they're this nationwide network of spies who are all trying to figure out one thing, which is a bunch of objects have come in with their inertias reversed, which means they move backwards through time. So like you shoot a gun and the bullet goes back into the gun. Seems pretty simple to start out with. Like, honestly, if it just left it at that, I kind of would have been fine with it. Like, it could have done something really interesting there. And there are a couple of scenes in which it uses that to its advantage. Eventually, the protagonist, who's unnamed, he's called the protagonist.
He's just called he literally says in the movie, "I'm the protagonist."
Yeah, he says multiple times in the movie, "I'm the protagonist." Shut up. He teams up with a guy named Neil, played by Robert Pattinson, who I wish I could say was better in this movie.
Really? I like this character.
Again, every character is the same, so it feels like he's doing the same thing as John David Washington, who's doing the same thing as Kenneth Branagh, who's doing the same thing as every other character.
Really? I disagree with that. I thought Kenneth Branagh gave a great performance.
Yeah,
I thought he was a great villain. Like, he's able to be like calm, and then he also has those moments where he like really snaps. Like, that's like true like Bond villain nature.
I think the only good performance here was Elizabeth Debicki as
Catherine. She's also really good. But yeah, I thought Kenneth Branagh was the standout performance to me, just because I love the James Bond movies, and like here he's playing like classic Bond villain, to where again like you see moments where he's just like totally reserved, and then you just see moments where he absolutely snaps. And then Robert Pattinson kind of plays a guy who's like, he's kind of like the chill guy who's on the mission. Like, he seems like just this regular guy, and like not super complex, not super innovative, just like a good guy, like just like a good guy that you go on this mission with. Right. John David Washington was the one to me that felt pretty emotionless. And when I first watched this with my dad, he disagreed with me. He really liked John David Washington's performance. He wasn't bad. I just felt like his character was a little bit distant. Maybe it's because, I don't know if it's because how he was written, how maybe John David Washington is as an actor, which I think I find kind of that occurrence, or just how he was directed. I just found him at kind of like an emotional disadvantage. And I'll never forget when I first watched this movie, I get about halfway. My dad turns to me, he's like, "Do you understand what's going on? I'm lost." And I asked him like 5 times, "Are you liking the movie?" And he keeps telling me, "No, I hate this. This sucks." And while this is a movie, I find this movie to be I've seen it 3 times because I wanted to really like get this movie. It does get better on rewatch. Like it does improve itself on rewatch for that reason because it's so complicated. But like even 3 times, I still don't really understand entirely what Christopher Nolan was trying to do. But I appreciate a lot more of it now than I did when I first watched it because I know, like, obviously you know how scenes play. In the third act of this movie, I still don't know what the hell happened.
Yeah, I don't think any goddamn sense.
Or like the opening scene, it jumps straight into this opera like heist thing, and the whole movie references the opera, and the whole time I'm just like, you're first watching it, you're just like, what? Like, okay, like they just jump into it. Someone's moving backward, and then you see like the little tether thing, and it's revealed to be Neil later on in the movie.
Yeah,
and there's some great scene. There's a lot of great scenes in here. Where Robert Pattinson and John David Washington enter a room, and it's like, what happened in here? Oh, it hasn't happened yet, and he ends up almost like reverse fighting this guy who turns out to be him.
Yeah.
In like a different time. I actually liked how that really crossed paths with each other. You get like them actually crashing a jet into an airport. You have like a building exploding and then exploding again at the top, and then you have like the car chase, which I thought was pretty cool. There's a lot of good in here in my mind.
Yeah, and I mean, this movie tries to set itself up to be palindromic, and I think the middle scene is, in my opinion, the best scene in the movie, where John David Washington's brought in for this investigation, and the Kenneth Branagh character is like, he has his wife, Kat, at gunpoint, right? And he's trying to figure out, because John David Washington's like, has something that he wants, and he's trying to figure out where he put it, because he put it in some vehicle, and they're talking to each other, and Kenneth Branagh eventually, by like threatening the Elizabeth Debicki character, he gets John David Washington to say that it's in Kenneth Branagh's BMW. And then the camera goes through this machine that reverses your polarity, and we come out on Kenneth Branagh's side, and the whole thing plays backwards, but the dialogue still works.
Yeah.
Where he starts out by saying that it was in the BMW, and then he keeps saying, like, I don't know, how did you know? And then, like, Kenneth Branagh keeps asking questions where those answers kind of fit, which is a really, really good scene. Like, that's a really good scene.
Yeah.
And it's intense, and it's cool. And then after that, the movie drops back off of a cliff.
Yeah, this is a movie to me that's just, it really disappointed me when I first watched it, just because I feel like the plot, like the backwards moving time aspect, like, you know, a movie's confusing when the backwards moving time aspect is the easiest part to follow. Like the actual spy mission, like my mom doesn't, like, every time I watch a movie with her, we always have to like pause and explain what happens. It could be a Marvel movie and we have to pause and explain what happens. I'm serious. We watched, I think, Ant-Man or something.
And she was, that's not hard to follow.
Yeah, and we're like, who's this again? And I was like, oh my god. I told her, like, we were trying to watch it, like, I told her to watch Inception. It's like, she was like, is that going to be a little bit too confusing for me? And I was just thinking about this movie. I'm like, if you think Marvel movies are confusing, you won't make it like literally 30 seconds without asking a question, because it jumps in and there's like guys in a truck outside of an opera building. And I don't know, there's a lot to appreciate here, especially like on rewatch. I do think this movie gets better, but this is a movie I don't want to have to watch it 9 times to understand what's going on. Yeah. And it's a movie that ultimately I find more disappointing than I do necessarily bad. I don't think this is a bad movie. I love spy movies. I can get a lot of enjoyment out of it. But this is a movie I'll never fully understand, like, the actual plot. And I've watched explainer videos. None of them are really, like, they explain things that are made clear, but they're not necessarily things that not everybody I don't think knows exactly what was going on. And it's also kind of interesting that Travis Scott did the theme song for this one that I think a lot of people forget.
Did he really?
Yeah, and the the song on the credits.
Yeah,
even, his voice is even in a part of the score. You know, really? The scene where he's climbing up the ladder, like they're going on the chase, and he's climbing up the ladder on the fire truck.
I do remember that.
They put his voice in the score.
Oh, really?
Because of like how he does his autotune.
That's funny, because I was gonna talk about that, because that part of the score reminded me a lot of the score for the 28 Weeks, Days, Years Later franchise, where it leans very heavily on like electric guitar and those heavy sounds. That it sounded a lot like that. It makes sense that it's Travis Scott's voice. Like, now that you say that, it makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know. This movie, I have it I have this one in the B tier. I do have it above Dunkirk. I do think it's a better film than Dunkirk, but I have it below Dark Knight Rises and Insomnia.
I also have this above Dunkirk because I actually respect what it's doing. And I think it's, even though it doesn't land, it's ambitious, and there are some parts of it that are really good. It's in the D tier for me.
Okay.
Uh, above Dunkirk, above The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
I didn't hate Tenet. I mean, I didn't like Tenet, but I didn't hate Tenet.
Yeah, I mean, there's also one thing, like the son, like the little kid.
Oh yeah.
There's a theory that that's the younger version of Neil because the character's name is Maximilian and the middle letter is inverted is Neil.
Yeah.
So there's like a theory to that. I think that's
Sure.
pretty interesting. And I think some of the action sequences in here, I think are some of Nolan's best. I think John David
Right.
Washington, I think that's where he comes to the play, like the scene where he's in the kitchen and he's like, I forgot what he says. He's like, like where's my sauce or something, and he just starts wailing on this guy.
Right.
The humor in this movie was actually a lot better than I
Yeah.
expected.
I didn't laugh at a single moment.
Like it was just like small humor that kind of like when they're talking about like crashing a plane into a jet, it's like, oh, don't be so dramatic, and there's like, what about the size? It's like, well, that's a little dramatic. Like, I mean, there's obviously like some winking at the camera, trying like to try to keep up. Is obviously like a line that's in this movie. Or like, don't try to understand it. Don't try to understand it. Feel it is another one that's in this movie.
Yeah. Oh, I don't feel anything actually. I feel one thing: confusion.
So yeah, I was a little frustrated with this. I'm still a little bit frustrated with this movie now, but I don't dislike like when upon first viewing. This probably would also be like in the C to D tier, but I've rewatched it a few times. I have it in the B tier. There's a lot I respect and enjoy. Now that I know where the parts go, I've accepted I'm never going to be able to follow this movie entirely, but I enjoy it for what it is. But I think it's one I a little bit respect more than I enjoy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I respect it more than I enjoy it, and I didn't enjoy it much on the first time I watched it, but I appreciate that he tried to do something. And that's honestly, I feel like he didn't try to do something with Dunkirk, and I feel like he didn't try to do something with The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that he did something.
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking of doing something, this next movie won him not only his first Academy Award, but also won Best Picture.
Also, I think it won him his second Academy Award. Right?
No, that was his first.
Well, it won him two.
Oh, yeah. Also won a second. As in the words of Al Pacino, in my eyes, see Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer.
One half of the giant Barbenheimer craze, which still traumatized me as someone who works at a movie theater. I saw so much pink and black opening week. Like, so much pink clothing and black clothing, it was unbearable.
I did Barbenheimer when they both released at home, and initially when I first did it, I was like, Barbie's the better movie. Oppenheimer grew a lot more in my mind as a movie that I really enjoy.
Oppenheimer, like this movie, obviously it's like a 3-hour epic telling the story of J. Robert Oppenheimer. Which when it was first announced, I was like, really, this is the next movie you're gonna do? And after watching this movie, I loved it.
Yeah,
like
me too.
I absolutely loved it, and it's a movie that made me more scared of the world that we live in, just because not only did J. Robert Oppenheimer create something that not only ended a war, but also something that can also start wars, and also makes it clear by the end the world is no longer a safe place because this thing is out there. It's where even the trial that he goes on towards the end, like you really fear that, and it's really like encapsulates a little bit of like fear in a way.
Yeah, and
I know this movie's not a horror film, but like it kind of like shows that in a way to where like he's giving like the podium like, oh, we can use this to stop the Nazi, and then you like see like the face melting off of people.
The first line of this movie is also the last line, and it's haunting.
It is very haunting.
The beginning scene, we see it at the end, and it's basically Albert Einstein, who just talked to Oppenheimer, like walks away and he's really mad. And we see at the end, because during the movie, they were talking about how if they set off a nuclear bomb, it could just ignite every single particle in the universe and completely end our world.
Exactly, yeah.
And so Oppenheimer says to Einstein, he's like, you remember back when we started the Manhattan Project, when we thought that we were going to create something that would destroy the world? Like we were going to start a chain reaction that would destroy the world? Yeah. And then he says, I think we did. Yeah. And that's haunting.
It is very haunting.
Cillian Murphy sells it so goddamn well.
He does.
He's such a good actor. It is one of the greatest performances of the 21st century.
Absolutely. And and also Robert Downey Jr. as Louis Strauss was incredible.
That was, I mean...
He gave an incredible performance.
He stepped into different skin. He was a chameleon. I spent half of the movie being like, is that actually Robert Downey Jr.?
My dad didn't know it was him for the entire runtime. Yeah, and he saw the credit. He was like, Robert Downey Jr.? I was like, yeah, he was Louis Strauss. And my dad was like, what? Yeah. My dad looks at me, he's like, holy shit. I was like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's really good. He's such a good performer.
Yeah, this movie, like, it is such a good, like, I was a little bit more frustrated with some of his last couple, but this movie is just return to classic Christopher Nolan storytelling.
Yeah.
Like obviously it's based off of a book, but like you
Yeah,
really
American
see.
Prometheus.
I absolutely loved like when the bomb was dropped, the whole place goes silent.
Oh,
Like
the
any
sound
other movie, just be
design.
this huge sound is like this huge suspense, and you get like the little bit like the glitching in and out, like you see like
Yeah.
the spin thing with like the blue background,
Yeah.
and like this bomb drops, and like you think something's gonna happen, like you think it's gonna make a loud noise, and it doesn't.
No.
It's just the effect.
It's just the weight of it is enough.
Yeah, it really made like you really watch this movie and you just think about the world that we live in. We are like obviously we are in a much less safer environment than we were prior to the creation of the atomic bomb. Yes, it dropped on Hiroshima and ended World War II, but this can easily be used to start one. The second someone drops an atomic bomb on someone, it's war.
Right.
And it's all because of this, and you really see that through the back half of this movie where like he has the rapport with Louis Strauss, and the two of them are like going at it basically.
Right.
And you understand why. Like it's haunting. And I feel like this movie also had hints of Christopher Nolan potentially doing a horror film, which was I was hoping was his next movie, but it won't be.
Yeah.
And especially the scene where like you can see like he's looking into the crowd and he sees a girl's face melting off.
Yeah.
That is like probably the scariest scene he's ever done.
Yeah.
Alongside with Scarecrow and Batman Begins for me. And this movie is just so well done right from the beginning. And you even have like smaller parts like Kenneth Branagh as Niels Bohr and the Can You Hear the Music, which turned into a score that everybody uses like on like to this day. Just a great movie. Like it absolutely deserves Best Picture win. Christopher Nolan absolutely deserved an Oscar for it. Like this is a great movie in my mind.
It's quite an excellent movie. I just there's a scene where Oppenheimer's on trial because he's suspected of being a communist, which history dealt him a bad hand because that's like one of the last major things that happened in his life, and he tries so hard to make that exciting and interesting, and I think he succeeds like well enough, but man, it's tough. And he gets asked a question, which is, does he regret creating the nuclear bomb?
Yeah.
And it's this weird scene because it's like, it did end World War II. And that's what they keep saying. It's like it ended World War II, it ended World War II, it ended World War II. And he's like, how could you not regret that? How could you not regret creating that bomb? How could you not regret being an integral part? And they're like, if you regret it, like, why did you do it? Because he's like, I knew it was wrong when I started it, but I only knew it was wrong when I had gone too far to like stop. And it's this view into this guy that's so clearly haunted.
Yeah.
I think it's really excellent. And they do such a good job at making it like this trial is essentially a trial of Oppenheimer's morality. Forget the fact that it hinges on whether or not he was a communist. It's a question of whether he did the right thing, and it gets the weight it deserves.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, there's also like a great cast. I feel as well. Like you get Matt Damon in a great role. You get Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh in great roles. You get Jack Quaid in a small role. You even get Roderick from Diary of a Wimpy Kid in a small role.
Well, who's the actor there?
Yeah, I forgot his name. I forgot his name in real life, but the guy who plays Roderick from Diary of a Wimpy Kid is in
I'll check it out.
God, I'm blanking on his name, but yeah, he's in this movie, and I'll never forget. Christopher Nolan did an interview, and he said Roderick rules, the absolute goat. That's how you know Christopher Nolan's the goat.
And Devon Bostick.
Devon Bostick, that's right.
And maybe it's just Devon, but regardless, that's his name.
Yeah, yeah. This movie, it's so well crafted, and every scene, like every single scene of this movie, I felt encapsulated in. So this movie, it's absolutely S tier for me. As much as I love Inception, The Dark Knight, Memento, I do think this movie falls like. But like this one's an S tier for me, like no doubt.
Yeah, Oppenheimer's S tier, below Memento, above The Dark Knight. I watched this movie in an era in which I wasn't able to pay attention to movies really. My attention span was so low, and I tried watching these long movies, these like movies that focus a lot on the environment of the place. I watched the Lord of the Rings Fellowship. And I watched Dune, the Denis Villeneuve version. Hated both because I couldn't pay attention to them. And going into this movie, I was like, I'm not going to like it because it's too long. I'd only enjoyed one 3-hour movie, and it was Endgame at that point. And I came into it, and I was hooked every single scene. It was one of those movies that made me realize what cinema could be. Like, you know, obviously First Blood is what I always attribute to introducing me to the world of movies and what really got me into it. But Oppenheimer definitely broadened my horizons. and I will always appreciate it for that. And even forgetting the sentimental value I have with the movie, it's pretty damn good. So
Yeah,
S tier
it's
for me.
actually interesting because like I don't know, for me, like I'm someone that watched the entire 4 hour cut of Justice League in one sitting, which
Oof.
I don't know how I did.
Yeah.
I don't know how I did that, but I think that was a great movie. Like for me, like long run times didn't really scare me. It's a shame that Barbenheimer, like Oppenheimer and Barbie, because I think this movie is far superior to Barbie, which I'm not going to dive into specifics on that one,
Yeah.
but I really do think this is a great movie. Like, I'm really glad that people went out to go see it. Maybe primarily because of the Barbenheimer thing, but I just think because the message it has, not just to the world, but also the storytelling it had, I just think was really effective, and it makes me really excited for Christopher Nolan's next movie because I feel like I think he's on a hot streak right now, and I feel like
Yeah.
adapting these stories I think could really work.
I wouldn't call it a hot streak as much as he made one good movie, because it's like the two before this movie I didn't like, and even if you don't count Interstellar, the three.
Or he's riding high on
He's definitely
Oppenheimer.
riding high on Oppenheimer for sure, and so much so that he broke his tradition. He since Interstellar has been releasing one movie every 3 years. A trailer always releases the December before the movie releases. The first trailer always is December. Oppenheimer was so popular that Universal got him to move the trailer date to like July of this year.
Yeah, I remember. Wait, really?
Apparently,
For the Odyssey?
apparently the Odyssey, the
Oh my
first trailer is
God.
coming out in July instead of December.
That's
So
insane. Next month we'll be getting a trailer for the Odyssey.
yeah, so I mean, when this comes out, it'll be this month. It might already be out. Um, so yeah, Oppenheimer is definitely a sensation,
Yeah, absolutely.
and I think it deserves to be a sensation. And I sincerely hope he can keep that going into the Odyssey,
I do too.
because I don't think he's especially on a hot streak. I still don't think that he hasn't done anything that captured the mind as much as Inception did in the 15 years since. So maybe the Odyssey will be the one, because again, the Odyssey is historically known as the most epic poem of all time.
Yeah, and I feel like if
It's-
anyone at this point can do it, it's going to be Christopher Nolan. Like
Yeah.
he finally won his Oscar. He's shown he can go big and epic. Like he's shown he could take like J. Robert Oppenheimer and turn him into someone that now everybody knows who he is.
yeah,
I feel like if anyone can adapt the Odyssey, it's going to be him.
and that's the thing. Barbenheimer created this super weird situation for moviegoers where one of the most popular movies of the year was a 3-hour biopic about J. Robert Oppenheimer. And this is in coming off of an era in which we've just been exposed to 12 straight years of superhero movies. And they're the most popular movies of all time,
Yeah.
Just like coming out, they're the things that are dominating the box office. And it feels like COVID was almost this great reset for the tastes of moviegoers. And like suddenly it's like they would rather watch Oppenheimer than the Marvels.
Minecraft.
I mean, Minecraft, and then
Yeah.
Barbie and Super Mario Bros. Were the top two for that year, but Oppenheimer was number 3.
Yeah, I think it's because of the double.
I mean, sure, it might be because of the double feature with it and Barbie, but it's still like Nolan's movies hadn't done that well yet.
Yeah, I mean some of
Like-
like The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises both made $1 billion. Inception was close, which is
Yeah,
remarkable for the time.
But that's the thing. Like those are still superhero movies. This is a not superhero movie. This is the opposite of a superhero movie.
yeah,
And we're getting to a point where Christopher Nolan is a brand, And
Yeah.
that's why I say he's the modern James Cameron, in the sense that James Cameron can make Avatar and people will still go to see it because it's James Cameron, not because it's Avatar.
yeah, and also because it also doubles because people want to see it in 3D as well as digital.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I respect the hell out of Christopher Nolan, even though through this discussion we've learned that about half of his movies I don't really like.
Yeah, which is wild. It was like save for maybe one, I like all of his movies.
Yeah, and just I really respect the fact that we have gotten a guy that makes movies that aren't necessarily on whatever the cultural zeitgeist is and don't exactly fit into it, and people want to see it. And I think that's really something. I just
Yeah.
I really respect the hell out of
Yeah.
it.
I guess now that we finally wrapped up all 12 of his movies, I guess we should go back through his ranking.
Yep. Let's go. I'll go first because you went first last time.
Yeah.
I'll start at the bottom there. F tier for movies that I hate that I think have next to no redeeming qualities. I've got Dunkirk is my least favorite. I don't like Dunkirk. And then I've got The Dark Knight Rises is my number 11. I don't like The Dark Knight, but I like it more. Slightly. D tier is essentially just for movies that I respect, but they're Tenet. They're too Tenet for me to, like them. And that's the where Tenet is. That's Tenet. That's Tenet tier. D tier is for Tenet. The C tier for movies that I think have major flaws that really hold them back, and is Insomnia, which I just don't think has enough plot. Batman Begins, which I just don't think has enough analysis and like thought put into it. And then the B tier, which is for movies that I like, but they're not great, and that's Following. And then all the next 6 movies are all S tier for me, which is like a 50% hit rate is really good.
Yeah, you don't have any in the A tier?
I don't have any in the A tier. It's all S tier.
Yeah, so it's either top or bottom.
It really is. Every movie for him is hit or miss. Which is interesting. Like I can't really think of a director that really does that. But the fact that he has a 50% hit rate is quite good. But my S tier is The Dark Knight, Oppenheimer, Memento, Interstellar, The Prestige, and at the top, Inception.
All right, that's pretty fair. Yeah, that's a pretty good list. All right, I guess when I get into mine, we'll get the rest of your disagreement. So for a D and F tier, I actually don't have any in either. I don't think he's made a bad film, at least for me. I do have one in the C tier, and C tier is one that's just like, it's a movie that inherently is not a bad movie. It's just, I respect the craft, but when you're comparing it to his other movies, it's odd. Like it's the black sheep of his career. Like obviously, like you're comparing a movie with a $10,000 budget that, and that's Following. That's one that's just like, it was a unique experience, but not one that I really can put up against some of the other ones. B tier, and this one was teetering between B and C, but I think for now I'm going to leave it at the bottom of B tier, and that's Dunkirk.
Yeah.
Just because, technically marvelous. I love how the father character is written, but, a little bit emotionally distant, or I guess pretty emotionally distant for me. And then above that, I have Tenet, a movie that really disappointed me when I first watched it. I think is way too confusing, and I think should have been complex, not confusing, kind of like Inception.
Yeah. But
one that, I like spy movies, so I still get a kick out of it. And then above that one in the B tier, I have Insomnia. I think it's a straightforward murder investigation, but I don't think that makes it a bad film in any means. I think not at all. I think could have used more of Christopher Nolan's writing a little bit. Yeah. And then top of the B tier, we have The Dark Knight Rises with Jesse breaking my heart, putting that in the F tier.
Yeah, I don't like it.
I really do like this movie. I have a lot of nostalgia for it. I think there's actually a lot that this movie gets right, but on a script level, it's probably Christopher Nolan's worst script that he's ever written. But I do still really like this one. A tier, bottom of the A tier, I do have The Prestige. Maybe this will go up or down upon rewatch, but it's a movie I think gets so many things so right. I love so much of this movie. I just feel like the relationship between the two characters, I think it should have had a clear protagonist and antagonist. Maybe that's just me.
I think it is just you.
Yeah, I think it might be just me. and then I have Batman Begins right above that. I think a great introduction to the Dark Knight trilogy. And then I think great introduction to the Dark Knight trilogy. I really like a lot of Batman's origin. I just feel like the fight scenes suck, and Christian, there's some nitpicks to be had in there, but I think overall for me it's the one that I really like. Top of the A tier, I have Interstellar. Really, the only thing holding this one back for me is the ending. Kind of destroys it a little bit, but the rest of the movie I think is great for what it is. And then S tier, cream of the crop, best of the best. Bottom of the S tier, I have Oppenheimer. Like we just talked about this one, great movie. Yeah. Obviously, like it absolutely deserved Best Picture. Christopher Nolan absolutely deserved to win an Oscar. And then Memento, one of those movies that really opened my eyes to how well films and filmmaking could have gone. Because for me, like in terms of new movies that came out that really like hooked me into film, the first one for me was Joker.
Really?
Maybe that hasn't aged well because of the sequel, but for me, when I first saw Joker, I just was really amazed, and then not too long after I saw Memento, which also really showed that you can do a lot without big CGI explosions and fight sequences. Because I recently saw Endgame previously, right? And then my number 2, I have The Dark Knight, classic, one of if not the greatest comic book movie ever made. Great performance of Heath Ledger all around. And top of the S tier, on a day, might be my favorite movie of all time, and that's Inception.
Yeah,
Just
reasonable.
yeah. So that's my list.
Yeah. Looking forward to the future. We've got the Odyssey. I predict good things for it.
I do too.
I do think that Nolan has an eye for the dramatic, and I hope he's going to bring that to that play because it's one of my favorite stories in general of all time.
I've never read the Odyssey.
I love the Odyssey, dude. It's really, really good. Yeah, so I think it's interesting. Both of us have had some cinematic entrance via Christopher Nolan. You know, for you it was Memento. For me, it was Oppenheimer. His films are sometimes fantastic, and when they aren't, they are at least fanatic.
Yeah, I feel like of all of our rankings, like this is the one that we disagreed on the most. But I feel that's
for sure. 100%.
I feel like that's good. I mean, film is subjective, and I feel like Christopher Nolan, a lot of his films, it sparks like debates and conversations, which I actually really appreciate about him as a filmmaker.
Yeah, no, and I just think it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out for us, and I wonder if we'll agree on the Odyssey when it comes out July 2026. So
maybe a year from now we'll do an updated updated tier ranking.
Speaking of our updated tier ranking, if you think we got anything wrong, if you have something that we missed, if you have a different opinion, if you want to argue with us, if you want to agree with us, if you want to say anything about this episode, leave it in the comments.
Yeah,
we read every single comment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. if you want to yell at me about not liking the ending to Interstellar, or not loving it, or not putting the Prestige in S tier, go for it.
And feel free to yell at me for not liking The Dark Knight Rises. And, we'll take all these comments and we'll address some of them when we do our Odyssey episode in July of 2026. How does that sound?
Yeah,
that's pretty good. So. If you want to read all of our, I don't know if you've posted all your reviews, but I've posted all my reviews for these movies on Letterboxd at THRNV. That's Threnv. You want to plug your Letterboxd?
Yeah, sure. I have a couple of my Letterboxds at MJ Spiegel. I post on there as often as I can. I used to be dormant for a little bit, but I saw Beverly Hills Cop 4, and I was like, maybe I should get back to this. So ever since then, July of last year, I've been just going away. Mostly new releases, but I also included some old stuff too. Whatever I can watch, I basically just log on there just to see my thoughts.
Yeah, so that's how you can find us, our opinions, and hopefully we will be seeing you in the next one. Until then, roll credits.
All right, peace out.